City of Northglenn, Channel 8, keeping you informed of events in your community.
Hello, I will now call the study session meeting of January 27th, 2020 to order. Will the city clerk please call roll?
Mayor Leidy?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford?
Here.
Councilmember Woodkovich will be absent. Councilmember Peterson?
Here.
Councilmember Downing? Here. Councilmember Brown will be absent. Councilmember Goff?
Here.
Councilmember Duran-Mullica?
Here.
Councilmember Escabel?
Here.
Excellent, thank you. So tonight's study session will have the joint meeting with City Council and the NURA Board. City Manager Geyer, would you like to introduce the item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to turn it over to Debbie Tuttle, our Economic Development Director, to start off the presentation, but we do hold joint meetings with our members of our Urban Renewal Board on an ongoing basis, and there's a lot of exciting news to share with you and with the community tonight. So with that, I'll have Debbie walk us through.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. First of all, for our new council members here, I thought I would take the opportunity to introduce our NURA board that is here today. Jerry Gavette, do you want to stand up and say hi, or at least do this?
Raise your hand.
And he was just elected as the vice chair for NURA for 2020. Rosie Gardner, our chair. Chris DeMay, Kathy Novak, and Pat McCune. We do have a couple other members, but they're not here tonight. So with that, I'm just going to dive right in. And I might, because we do have new city council members, I might kind of go over some of the history a little bit. So feel free to stop me if you have questions or if it doesn't make any sense. So as City Manager Geyer indicated, we have an intergovernmental agreement with the City Council. And in order to update the council on the NURA activities going on, I also include that, of course, in my economic development report. But we also want to have an open forum for the council to be able to talk with NURA, NURA to talk with the council. And so that's what these meetings are for. So the first thing on the memo that we're going to talk about is the Garland Center remediation, environmental remediation. So for historic purposes, we probably all remember the Garland Center Shopping Center, the 45,000 square foot shopping center. It was the longest standing mall, first one, in west of the Mississippi. And of course, it was very blighted, if you all remember that. Mm-hmm. And so NURA took this on. We actually assembled the property, and we actually purchased it. And if you recall, there was the big mall piece, but there was also the Dairy Queen piece as well. Mm-hmm. And then there's also a small parcel on the front, which is now the Starbucks, which wasn't part of that acquisition. And so back in 2012, we purchased the property, and that was when the new Walmart grocery stores were coming out, the new markets were coming out. So we approached the Walmart grocer, and we said, we think this would be perfect. We only have one full-service grocer in our community, and the great thing was they wanted to come to Northglenn. So we did community meetings and so forth. I'm not going to go into all the details, but just give you kind of some history on that. In 2012, we did sell the property to Walmart. As part of that sales and purchase agreement, NURA was required to do any environmental remediation that needed to be done on the site. Mm-hmm. If you recall, and maybe some of you won't, because I don't remember this, and I've been around forever, but there was an old dry cleaner on the site many, many decades ago. Those doggone dry cleaners, they do so much damage. So it actually has what they consider, they call it PCEs in the groundwater, and that's the environment cleanup that we're required to do. So since 2012, NERA's invested over $113,000 in the environmental cleanup of this site. Tried lots of different things, injections, and we've done many, many scientific things to try to resolve this with a lot of different consultants. Since that time, we have not been able to remediate it. We've tried everything we knew to do. So we actually contacted the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment and asked them if they had any other ideas. Because of course, what we want to do is we want to get it cleaned up and remediated, and then we don't have it anymore. So it's called a voluntary cleanup. And so there's a new technology that's just come out, and it is called e-redox. And the CDPHE, we would have never known about this, but it's been in the pilot stages for the last 2 years. So we had this new technology from Advanced Environmental Technologies come and present to our board, give us a presentation on this new technology, to come in and actually, we already have existing wells. We cleaned up everything on pretty much on all the sites, because there was 8 wells originally, but there's only one that's given us a fit, and that's actually in the right-of-way over by the church, Yosemite Church, Lutheran Church. That's the one that's given us the fit. So it's actually migrated across the street.
Did it go to the church?
It is actually on the church property, and they are aware of that. So
Because when we checked it before,
It wasn't.
it was not there.
it was not.
So it's moving.
It's moving.
Okay.
So
thank you.
we're hoping that this e-redox technology will do the trick. And CDPHE really feels like, from all the technology and all the results that have happened, that this is the right technology to eliminate the PCEs in the groundwater. So we are about to dig a new well over on the church, so within the next 2 weeks. We worked with the church and their board to get permission, one, to update them on the situation that it had migrated over onto their property, and also to get their permission to drill a new well there and actually run a pilot testing on this new e-redox technology. So that'll be happening in the next 2 weeks. So after the pilot test is completed, 3 months will be completed. We'll see if it actually did the job of what it's supposed to do, and then we will install another 5 wells, including over on the church's property. So that's what we've been doing. The new project is costing NERA $133,000. So with what we've already invested and with the new project, we're already invested about $250,000 in the remediation. But it has to be done. We want to get it done. We want to get it cleaned up, and the goal is to get it cleaned up, and the CDPHE will give us what we call that no further action or no action determined letter that says we're done. Questions on that you might have? Yes.
Wondering about the quantity. Do we know how much is there?
Yes, it's above the quantity allowed for CDPHE. It's not exuberant, but they have a level of what you can exceed, and we're right above the level. So we're right there. We have to get it down.
Thank you.
My question is, like, what do you mean by well?
It's actually a well. They actually drill a well into the ground, and there's like a meter that's put, this e-redox is actually got a meter in there, and electrodes are actually going from electricity into there, and that's what's going to hopefully
So they're not
remediate.
taking anything out, they're just putting something in?
No, but
Got it.
then they go back into the water, in the groundwater, after the pilot test, and of course, what they'll be doing is measuring whether there's any, if the PCEs have lowered below the CDPHE levels, and has it done its trick. So it's called monitoring wells. And if you go out, you'll notice them in lots of ground, mostly at the Garland Center. They look like a manhole, quite frankly. There's actually a cover over them.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right, thank you.
Other questions on the Garland Center property? Okay, the church has been incredible to work with, just as an FYI. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is a marketplace update. As you probably know, the Bed Bath & Beyond was relocated before Christmas. It's doing great. If you haven't visited the new location, it is absolutely wonderful. And I've talked to the store manager, and they're doing very, very well. They love the new location. And the reason being, again, for reminder for new council members, is that Hutensky Capital Partners, which is the owner of all of the marketplace, with the exception of Lowe's, and before it had been what we call the Arrow Rock property. So there's 3 owners over there. In order for all those 3 owners If any changes needed to be made, signage, I will always use this because it relates to me, is you can't build a doghouse on that property unless all 3 property owners agree to it. And that includes striping of the parking lots. That includes changing tenants. That's putting new signage up. I will be honest with you, the owner, Arrow Rock, of the building, which is K&G, Woodley's, and Tuesday Mornings, that freestanding building, that owner was not cooperative, and I'll say that nicely, not cooperative, and being able to making positive changes. And so they were putting major halts on everything. In fact, the Bed Bath & Beyond, the signage, the exterior improvements, it was a fight, just those things to make the center better. So the game changer, as we all know, and I know you're aware of this, is that Hutensky Capital Partners understood the necessity of getting and assembling that other property with theirs. That's not one of the properties that they wanted to purchase. It was never in the budget of what they wanted to spend, of course. But they knew that in order to make any differences in that center, including the Harkins Theater, moving it around, and most of you have seen the plans, but we've got exciting things that we can do there, and our hands have been tied. And that also includes the tenants that we can attract over there too. So it's called an operations easement agreement, is what it is. And so now that, I'll call them HCP, Hutensky Capital Partners, owns that other building, they're going to be working with Lowe's to modify the existing OEAs to allow for getting the center actually updated the way it needed to be done and was presented to us. So before, when it was under third-party ownership, it was almost impossible for us to do and for them to do what they wanted to do. They didn't realize it was going to be as hard to do that as well. They did have to buy that property at a premium price. Of course, the owner wanted much more than what it was worth or appraised at, but they did understand the importance of this. So for the purposes on February 6th, NURA is holding their February board meeting a week early. We're going to be amending their redevelopment agreement. So NURA invested $8 million for an incentive for the center, for HCP specifically, to do all the modifications to attract Harkins there, to do all the things that were presented to us in the plan. But what they asked for was that we modify or amend the existing RDA to allow the $2 million of that to be used for the acquisition of that Summit property or the Arrow Rock property. So they still maintain all of the conditions in the existing RDA, so they still have to do all of the things that are conditions and improvements that they already did, but we're just advancing the $2 million for the acquisition of that Arrow Rock property, whereas before the first $2 million was not going to be released until the Harkins Theater was actually built. Now they can't, and Corey, you can chime in here at any time if I'm misstating anything. Okay. So again, this is a game changer. They're excited. They're in the process right now of redoing the plans, upgrading the plans from what they had submitted before and making it even better. And the Harkins Theater, they're trying to get the plans done for a new prototype. It's the new Harkins prototype. So we're really excited about this. As you know, it's taken way longer than we had anticipated, and again, for the public, this has not been an easy development project. And redevelopment projects are always very complicated. But for current updates over there, just to tell you some things that have happened, they have executed the 15-year lease with Harkins with four-year options, and then with a 4-year option, 15-year with a 4-year option. Bed Bath & Beyond signed a new lease at their new center with 2 5-year options. Phoenix Salon that they built out, of course, they are totally full with 36 new tenants there. And they've started the parking lot improvements of what they could get done under the conditions and the approval of the 3 owners. So they have made major investments already into the center. Again, NURA is going to be reallocating that $2 million to be used for the acquisition of the property on February 6th. And again, the RDA and the amendment still make sure that under the RDA that all the existing that's under the agreement will be done. So that kind of gives you an update on that. you want to add anything, Nura Board?
Do you want to talk a little bit about the theater itself, or is that, are you comfortable doing that or not?
Such as, like, how
Just the
big it is?
type, the kind, the design.
Oh, sure, sure. So again, we're not quite sure on how many theaters there's going to be because we're looking at different prototypes now and potential larger scales. But it will have all of the conveniences of the full-service restaurant, the full-service bar, the reclining seats, the IMAX theater. It's going to be all and more than what you're already experiencing in probably most of the other theaters. So I think you'll be very pleased with that. Any questions on Marketplace? Yes?
Thank you, Mayor. Debbie, Nura Board, thank you all so much for the work that you did over there. I think, Debbie, you said that this was a game changer for that area, and it truly is a game changer. I know that the owners of Woodley Furniture had really been holding up any forward momentum. So when I say that I'm excited, that's an understatement, because I know, along with the rest of, residents in Ward 4 and across Northglenn, this is going to be a really huge opportunity to build something there that everybody wants to use. So I want to say thank you to Nura. This is amazing. The other piece is I'm also really excited to hear that they're kind of reimagining what that area is, because I think we've all said for years that, there's so much potential, and that parking lot is just so underutilized. So if that means that we're not having food truck carnival or any other festivals in that area because they're doing something different and exciting, that's a great problem to have on our hands. The question that I have for you, Debbie, is with all of this new momentum, does HCP, do they have any plans to speed up any of their phases of the project?
Well, they want Harkins in there ASAP.
I mean, me too.
That's going to be the huge piece. So again, there's some tenant negotiations that are happening behind the scenes, as well as putting the plans together. So I'm hopeful that we'll be seeing plans in the next few months to be submitted to the city, as well as, of course, we'll share those with you. I'm sure we'll be tweaking back and forth as well. So now that they've done this, now what the next step really is the OEAs need to be modified, updated. Remember, they're 25 years old, so the things that are in there are totally out of date. So that needs to be done. But some things can concurrently happen now, because now only Lowe's has to sign off on improvements. So I think some things can concurrently be happening on top of the OEAs being redone, but also getting Harkins, all the plans in there, starting the construction. So.
Great. And can you remind me, do we have an estimated opening date for the Harkins Theater?
Well,
I'm sorry, if that's a loaded question, I apologize, it's not intended to be that.
No. I hope I'd hoped it would have been by the end of this year, but this is a major construction. So I wouldn't feel comfortable without talking with them and to see where the plans are and the newer modifications that they're making. So can we kind of punt to that until I get a little bit more information?
We can punt to that. Part of the reason I was asking is I remember when you all pitched the concept of bringing a theater, and I was like, but millennials just watch Netflix. How are we gonna keep this in business? And as my own kiddo gets older, I find myself going to more and more and more movies. So I'm really eager to be able to spend those tax dollars right here in Northglenn. So thanks for all your great work.
Perfect. Any other questions on Marketplace?
Here.
Yeah.
I just want to congratulate everyone for doing this. I mean, we've been working on it for a long time. I'm surprised that he finally decided to sell
For the right price.
for the right price. I know, well, that's true, But yeah, I mean, this is a major milestone in itself, so thank you.
So we'll just move on. As you know, the courts has opened. They got their CO last week. Second Time Sports has got their permit to start work on the frontage piece, because they're going to be taking that and putting their store in there. There will also be a space there, about 2,000 square feet, that could be used for another tenant, such as maybe a restaurant or something like that. That's kind of what they're looking for. So we're working with the courts to set up a time for the ribbon cutting and grand opening ceremonies, and we'll get back with you on that. We did number 4, 112th in Washington, which is one of the areas that, of course, we want to focus on. There's a lot of work that needs to be done there. Just as an FYI to City Council and the Mayor, we did put an offer in on the property at 112th in Washington. That's where the old liquor store is, that twoplex building. That's right there. So you probably know that a fire had happened there. It's been closed. The one side has been closed. We did make an offer, and it was a good offer, to purchase that property. This is a family-owned property, and they talked to the entire family, and they all agreed that at this time they did not want to sell. So they are right now in the process of getting their insurance settlements finished, and they'll start doing the completion of fixing the building where the fire was. So we did try on that. I'm hopeful that maybe in the future that might change. Also, at our February 6th meeting, I wanted to give you an update. We did pass our budget, our NERA budget, for 2020. However, something happened after we had done it, because we try to do our budget concurrently with your budget. We try to make them work together. So we had done all the budget work. We had a preliminary estimate from the assessor's office, Adams County assessor. They always give us a preliminary number of the revenue that we'll be receiving, the TIF revenue that we'll be receiving. We get that in August. Since I've been here, we've never been off. There's never been, in fact, we usually get more than what the preliminary is. However, this year we had a 17% reduction, which accounted to about $490,000 in TIF revenue and treasurer's fees being lowered. And the reason why that happened was SEL Hospital, as most of you know, it was a 3-story full-service SEL hospital. The 3rd floor was going to be medical offices and diagnostics and so forth. The 2nd floor was the inpatient, and the 1st floor was outpatient. SEL changed their model, and now it is just an emergency center, and floor 2 and 3 are expected to be office. So SEL, they went in and contested, just like you would on a normal house. You contest your taxes. And just as a comparison, in 2018, the value of that building was $15 million. In 2019, the preliminary adjustment was $37 million. So then, as you can imagine, the county more than doubled what it was assessed at. So they contested it, and they came with an agreement between SEL and the assessor's office of $20 million. So with that did make a reduction in our budget. We want to make sure that we get that corrected. So we're going to be doing that on February 6th. We're doing an amendment to our budget, as well as the $200,000 or the $2 million that we thought we were going to spend on HCP's first payment of their incentive. We had that budgeted before, that we thought we were going to do that. We were going to do that at the end of the year. The closing didn't actually happen until January. So we're going to make that adjustment to the budget too at the same time. And then attached is the NERA goals. We've gone over those last year with City Council jointly at one of our meetings, and also a grant overview of how we've been spending the money on the different grants. Scooter's Coffee, if you haven't seen, we did give them a business improvement grant as well as a business utility assistance grant to put in their grease interceptors and help with that, and all their signage and exterior improvements. So they should be opening, they say, and probably by the end of this month. So we're actually working with them on a ribbon cutting and grand opening later this month as well. So look forward to that. Any other questions for myself or our board members that are here today?
Just go over the bonding, our bonding that we bonded.
Sure.
The new members.
Sure. So just recently, last year, I think you guys were all aware of this, but again, for some of the new members, NERA actually bonded $11 million to be used for Civic Center Master Plan's infrastructure. So all the infrastructure, the trunk infrastructure that's going in there, the detention that's going over there, that is critical to the success of the private-public partnership development that will be occurring. So that $11 million is from existing TIF revenues, okay, that is already here coming from Webster Lake Promenade and also coming from the Garland Center. Those are the properties that are in the URA 2. With all the new private sector development, new TIF revenue will be generated on that site once the private activity is actually happening. In fact, we just released our request for qualifications and concept today, about 5 p.m. today, in fact, to solicit master developers for the P3 component. So we're moving forward on that. We're really, really excited about the possibility of getting an incredible, creative, visionary master developer for those last 2 sites. So we call them 2 super blocks. And so we're really looking forward to that. I know I am, so. Did that answer enough of what you wanted to?
Well, I think the debt service part affects our budget.
Oh, okay.
Maybe just touch on the fact that we entered into an IGA with NERA.
Right, so the city did enter into the IGA. You all saw that the council members that were here before. On this, the other piece of that, the IGA, was that, so the way the Civic Center Master Plan was developed was that the private development would come in and pay for infrastructure later and pay for our city hall. The private development was going to pay for this. By NERA going in and bonding the $11 million for the infrastructure, that freed up the money for the city to actually build a new city hall. All the funds from the $11 million is dedicated to the new city hall for the future city hall. Do you want to chime in here, Heather, if I'm not explaining it all?
Sure, no, you're doing a great job, Debbie. So if you look at the Civic Center master plan currently, there were phases outlined, and the timing of those phases is shifted because of the fact that we're in such a strong economic market. And so what was called for later, I believe phase 3 is really happening now. And so in partnership with NERA, we're able to leverage the TIF clock that is already running and capitalize on that TIF by speeding up. Once we speed up the private development and investment in the site, then we'll be able to capture that sooner. And it's a win-win for the city and for NERA. It's a significant deal, and we really appreciate the partnership with NERA. It's the first of its kind in Northglenn, but certainly a great example of how urban renewal is a tool that can be used for this type of development.
And it is critical when you're trying to attract a master developer to be able to use that as part of the incentive deal. It's already done, right? You've put in all that, you've put in $11 million of infrastructure that they're not going to have to pay for, right? And then they can just tie into it. So that's a really important part of doing it. As Heather said, it was phase 1 was, the rec center, senior center theater. Phase 2, there wasn't a lot going on there except for first we thought, well, we'll sell off the pads. And then as we've gone through this and we've talked to the development community, they're so interested in this, we felt like going to seek out a master developer to do all of it would be the best interest of the city to make sure the continuity is there. And again, as Heather said, a big piece of doing it now was the TIF clock. Because if we had waited, this new city hall, which that's what NERA money was actually, TIF money was actually going to be paying for in phase 3, wasn't going to happen until 2025. We can potentially get all the private sector in the ground and coming up and utilizing the TIF clock earlier than that. So we started the TIF clock, the tax increment financing clock, in 2014. And if we would have had to start construction on the new the new development that might be occurring, it was going to postpone everything. Whereas we can capture more years now, a new TIF revenue. So it's, again, a win-win situation.
And that'll go to the Urban Renewal Authority, and then they can utilize those funds for reinvestment.
And other redevelopment projects, yeah. Did I cover everything?
Do you just want to mention what the debt service has done to our budget and what? I'm sorry.
This is what she's trying to get to. So, our budget, the NERA budget, and you've got that attached there, you will see that the NERA budget in URA 1 is not very much. It's $100,000 kind of for expenditures. The TIF clock ended at Marketplace two years ago, I think 2 years ago. So no new revenue is coming in to the URA 1. And just for new members here, and I'm more than glad to sit down because it is complicated, in the URA 1 was the Marketplace, our biggest TIF generator, right? And for 25 years, we were getting that revenue every single month going into NERA for redevelopment projects. But also in there was Vitamin Cottage, because it was already developed, the Best Buy over there in the Applebee's on that side, and then also the natural grocers and the Vitamin Cottage, the one on 120th where the sushi place is. All of that is in the URA 1. It no longer generates any income to NERA anymore. The clock is done. So now we have a URA 2 clock, which is the Garland Center and Webster Lake, generating TIF, right? But that TIF is going to the bonding and the indebtedness of the bond. And so I think what Rosie's trying to get at for me to say is NERA doesn't have money to do investments going forward, not a lot of money. We'll have to be creative and strategic on how we invest the money. So I think that whereas before we had a lot of money in our budgets, you've seen them over the years, we've had a lot of money. We knew we were going to reinvest it. We reinvested $8 million into the marketplace, and now we've done $11 million in bonding for Civic Center. So our budget is very limited, but we still have enough money to still do the grants that we do to support our businesses, which has been very, very successful. And also part of the Memorandum of Understanding, IGA, is that if NERA had a redevelop, or I should say, if the city had a redevelopment project that needed to be done, wanted to be done, and NERA does not have the funding, then we would be able to have the opportunity to go to the mayor, city council as an opportunity to see if they wanted to fund it, or maybe loan it, or however it was going to be put together. So,
But the intent and really the essence of the IGA is collaboration.
Yes.
So we would be working in partnership, both entities, for the overall redevelopment work that is at play.
thank you very much. Other questions?
I do have a question. I'm wondering, considering you're talking about the budget right now, are you still considering grant applications? I'm
Yes.
looking here, and there's 450 of them. Do we have money to?
Not 450 grants.
How much? Explain it to me, please.
Yeah, so, let me see if I've
It
got the
says
budget here.
2020.
I don't know if I brought the budget down with me. Yeah, between the two, right, so URA 1 and URA 2, so, I did not bring the, okay.
Do you want my copy, Debbie?
That'd be great. Thank you. So on the grants, so you're gonna see 3 columns. One is the URA 1, one is URA 2, and then the total there. So if you go down where it says business incentives down there, you'll see BUOGs, 50,000 and URA 1. We have actually, in the amendment, we've actually made that higher now because we had already spent the entire 2019. There was a lot of grants that were budgeted for, but they're not going to be paid until 2020. So you'll see that also in the amended budget. But for right now, let's use these numbers. So $50,000 for big grants, or that's or BUOG grants, excuse me. In URA 1, so mostly those are grease traps. So if we attracted a few restaurants and the grease interceptors, let's just say, are 5,000 to 10,000 each, that doesn't go very far, right? And that's in URA 1. In URA 2, we've got 70,000. Again, utility assistance, they're improvements. That can also be water taps. That can be running a new water line, a sewer line. It can be bringing 110, electrical 110, and upgrading it to 220. So anything to do with utilities. I use grease interceptors just because that's what a lot of the grants go for. So right there, we have $120,000. And then in the business improvement grants, we have $60,000 allocated in URA1 and $70,000 in URA2. And again, that's for exterior improvements that can be seen from the public right-of-way. And we feel, and Jason Loveland, of course, is our treasurer, and he helped work with this budget and with the bonds and with our payments that need to be done, and we feel very confident that we can allocate that money to those grants. Other incentives is going to be a tough one for NERA going forward.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other comments or questions for NERA? Is there any comments on what you'd like NERA working on going forward with our limited budget?
Madam Mayor? Just like to bring to the forefront for everybody on council and for NERA board, with Councilwoman Brown out with difficult reasons, and wasn't she serving as the liaison on council with NERA?
Yes.
And maybe we can talk about this publicly or privately, but I'm not sure if there's a gap or a need to have council representation in the interim in support of Congresswoman Brown on your meetings and the things going on to make sure that.
Councilmember
What did I say?
Congresswoman.
Did I say Congresswoman? I haven't been watching the news recently for whatever. No.
He's got demoted.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
No, I just want to know if I mean, any one of us on council will do what we need to pick up that communication and whatever needs to happen in the interim. And that, I just want to, if that hasn't been done, what you might need, I just, to help our colleague.
Absolutely. And we encourage, everybody to come if they want to. We actually say on our posting that 3 or more mayor and city council members have been invited to this meeting. So it goes on every single one of our agendas. So you're always welcome to attend. I'll let you guys think about, I'm not sure all of the logistics with Councilmember Brown, so I'll let you guys worry about that and get back to me. And thank you very much for the offer.
Yeah, I think it's something to consider. I know Councilwoman Brown has reached out to all of her committees to make sure that they are covered. So my understanding is, Debbie, you do a lovely job as keeping us informed. So I'm okay with that. I know I'm coming to a upcoming meeting as well. So I think we might be okay. But we can definitely continue to think about that. So thank you for bringing it up.
And we encourage you to give us your ideas. One of the things I will say is I know there's a lot of properties on Washington Street that we would like to get cleaned up. These are matching grants, and the property owners need to have to participate in this. And if they're not willing to put money in their own properties, whether it's an incentive or a grant, it can be difficult to try to make some major cosmetic changes, as much as we'd want to. But if you look throughout the city, you'll see a lot of NERA, where NERA has actually touched. And it's really made a big difference in our business community, those matching grants, so.
Debbie, I know that we talked about this at some point last year, about some of the properties on Huron Drive that are north of 112. Has there been any other communication or consideration about opportunities in that area?
We are evaluating like that 112th corridor specifically, but because of the limited dollars that we have right now, I talk to the owners of those properties. I'm in close contact with them all the time because I'm always hoping that there may be some transitions and some things that could potentially change. I think this is a bigger project, and I think we need to be looking at it as strategically redeveloping along 112 because of the rail coming in. I mean, that's a huge opportunity, and we also will be having, rail opportunity, of course, both on the East Lake side with Carl's Farm, but also on the 112th in York. We do have a new housing developer that's coming in and wants to develop that property that had been the Jordan Perlmutters, which is adjacent to the rail station. But so I think there's a lot of opportunities. I don't think, quite frankly, a lot of that, you're going to see a lot of that this year. But the key is keeping open contact with all those business owners as well as those property owners as well, if there's going to be transitions or if they're looking to sell a building. Those are the kind of things that NERA does well. You know, we acquire buildings, we acquire land, and then sometimes it takes us a while to get it redeveloped and find the right end user, but that really does. That's a great strategic move on our part, is to be able to do that. So being up in front of that, knowing all the property owners as well as the businesses is important. So it's definitely on our list. And we understand the importance of that corridor.
I mean, it's not like we don't have very large projects on our plate. So just wanted to ask, and finally, just a comment, I really am excited about the direction that so many of our projects are heading across the city. And I feel like there are big things coming for Northglenn, and that's in large part to our partnership that we have with you all at NERA. So I just want to say thank you so much for all of the ways that you partner and support moving the city forward.
Thank you. Well, we are your partners.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. It was so great to see everyone. All right. Are there any other items for council?
Not for study session this evening, Mayor.
Okay. So hearing none, we are adjourned. We'll have the regular meeting at 7 o'clock. So thank you.
Thank you.
Jerry.
All right, I will now call to order the regular city council meeting of January 27th, 2020. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Lighty.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford.
Here.
Councilmember Whitkovich is absent. Councilmember Peterson.
Here.
Councilmember Downing. Here. Councilmember Brown is absent. Councilmember Goff.
Here.
Councilmember Duran Mullica.
Here.
Councilmember Escabel.
Here.
Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. City Manager Guyer, are there any responses to citizen inquiries?
Nothing this evening, Mayor.
Okay. Are there any other additions or deletions to the agenda? No, fantastic. So we have one proclamation tonight. January is National Radon Action Month. There's no one here to accept the proclamation, so I'm going to read it from here. Whereas radon is an invisible, odorless, radioactive gas that threatens the health of our residents and their families, and whereas radon is the 8th leading cause of cancer mortality overall, and likely the leading environmental cause of cancer mortality in the U.S., and whereas the Colorado Rocky Mountain region has been ranked Zone 1, an area with the highest radon potential possible by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and whereas data collected by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment indicates that approximately 50% of homes in Colorado have radon levels higher than the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's recommended radon action level. And whereas any home in Northglenn may have elevated levels of radon even if homes in the same neighborhood do not. And whereas radon problems can be fixed and testing for radon is simple and inexpensive. And whereas Tri-County Health Department, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and the American Lung Association are encouraging Americans to test their homes for radon, have elevated levels of radon reduced, and have new homes built with radon-resistant features. Now, therefore, I, Meredith Lighty, Mayor of the City of Northglenn, do hereby proclaim January 2020 as National Radon Action Month in the City of Northglenn, Colorado, and urge all residents to test their homes for radon to protect themselves and their families from the serious health risks associated with radon. Dated at Northglenn, Colorado, this 27th day of January, 2020. So we have a couple of other notes just to follow through with this. As a city, we do urge our residents to check out the information on the Tri-County Health Department and Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment's websites. There's a lot of information there, including links to help you order the testing kit, some low-income radon mitigation assistance, which is helpful, and they will have a list of certified measurement and mitigation contractors. So our communications department will also provide some information about radon testing for residents online. So thank you for that. All right, public invited to be heard. Statements are limited to 5 minutes per speaker. Statements must be related to city business and limited to matters of community interest. So it looks like we have 2 individuals tonight. So John, welcome.
Hi.
Join us, hello.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor Lighty, Mayor Pro Tem Wilford, members of council and staff. Good evening. It's good to be back in this chamber once again. First, congratulations, Mayor Lighty, on your election.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford on your appointment as Mayor Pro Tem. Councilor Peterson on your appointment in Ward 1. And Councilor Goff, congratulations on your election. And Julie, great to see you again as always. Anyway, our annual food drive is getting ready to start real soon. President's Day weekend is when we're going to be starting things in earnest. We're doing things behind the scenes right now. The 4 agencies will be the same as last year: Good Shepherd Presbyterian Church and Immaculate Heart of Mary Catholic Church here in Northglenn, and Thornton Community Food Bank and Food for Hope, which I am honored to be a volunteer of. Amazing organization, all 4 amazing organizations. So in any case, Northglenn, of course, won last year. Thornton's looking to change that. And just to keep in mind, we do have some additional locations for drop boxes this year. Sevi Ghost, who's the Director of Parks in the City of Thornton, has authorized us to use the Parks Building off 8th in Colorado for a spot for city workers to drop their food off. And then also Trailwinds Recreation Center opened in November, so that will now be utilized. And of course, Northglenn, I mean, with the construction, obviously, I know you'll figure something out. I mean, like, it'll be here at City Hall, the Recreation Center next door, and then the M&O building as well near East Lake. But anyway, at the end of the day, though, the real winners are our neighbors in need, the ones that need our help. And there is still a great need here in Northglenn, Thornton, and all through the Front Range and nationwide. You know, hunger is a big issue, and it's one that I'm happy to take on to help my community out, whether it's in Ohio or here in Colorado. So I guess that's about it for the day. So it'll go until March 28th, which is Palm Sunday weekend. The 21st of March will be our distribution. Or not distribution, I take that back. That is our shopping day at Costco in Thornton. Then the 28th will be our distribution day to the 4 agencies. So, and I've also talked to Aaron Pulling, who's the CEO of Food Bank of the Rockies, and they may be able to help us more logistically than they have in the past, which, if that comes to fruition, that'll be a big help for us in the Rotary Club. And also, for those that want to know, I am the duck. Come 4th of July, Duck Derby, we're getting started on that too, trying to get sponsors, lock them down that have sponsors in the past. We are starting that effort. And then also, I will be appointed as the new Sergeant at Arms tomorrow for our club. So, and that's all I have. And I will be back whenever your next meeting is after President's Day. That's when I'll be back, and then I'll be bringing progress updates to see how Northglenn is doing. So.
Excellent, John. Thank you for being here. So I'm glad you slid that in at the end, because there was a lot of us and us. I was like, who's us? So it's the Rotary Club, the Northglenn Thornton Rotary Club. So thank you so much for your work.
And I do have one more thing.
Yes.
I almost forgot. In 2 weeks' time, the awesome Mayor of Northglenn, Mayor Leidy, will be our guest speaker.
Yes.
February 11th at Red Lobster, 12:05. We welcome anybody to come and join us to hear our awesome mayor, well, the awesome mayor of Northglenn speak.
Yes.
So,
I will have something witty to say, I'm sure.
we look forward to that. So, okay, great seeing you all. Love you guys tremendously. Glad to call you all my friends, and glad to be
Thank
part of
you.
this community. I'm very honored and humbled to do that, to be a part. Thank you all.
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Real quick, City Manager Guyer, do we have locations set aside from those? Or
I
is it-
don't know if I want to reveal our winning strategy
Oh.
in public. So what I'll do is I'll have Debbie Tuttle send an email with all
Okay.
of those details.
Nice. All right.
Okay, well, good luck. And tomorrow I'll be speaking to Adams County Commissioners and then Thornton City Council tomorrow night, so let them know.
Excellent. Thank you. We love our friendly competition. It does benefit the residents ultimately, so thank you, John. All right, next one, Graydon, Washington. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Graydon Washington. I am a representative of BGID Northglenn. We are a vertically integrated medical and recreational marijuana company, actually just west here of I-25. I'm here today to introduce myself to the council, mayor, and let you folks know that I'll be sitting in on the meetings. If you folks ever have any questions or concerns with our company and/or marijuana, I'm here as a to help you folks out or answer any questions. And yeah, that's about it. Oh yeah, we'd like to personally invite all you folks and any city officials to tour our facility just on the other side of the freeway. We have cultivation and stores in one location. So if you're ever interested, I'll be around towards the end of the meeting, and I'd love to give you my contact information and go from there.
Excellent. Could you remind me what it's called again? I missed that.
Yes, ma'am. It's BGOOD, so BGOOD.
Thank you.
And we've been operating in Northglenn here since late 2015, and love it up here, and been very involved. We actually had a community relations gentleman for years. His name was Tim Morgan, a Danish gentleman. he's moved on to another company, and here I am now. So, and I've been with the company for about 6.5 years.
Okay, thank you. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Anyone have questions? No? Awesome, thank you for coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Legislative Policy Committee update.
All right, I'll be giving the update tonight. So we did decide on supporting several bills, so I'm gonna run through the list with the titles. And if anyone on council has any questions or would like me to elaborate on a bill, we could do so. All right, so first off, we've agreed to support House Bill 1009, suppressing court records of eviction proceedings. House Bill 1121, retaliation against an elected official. House Bill 1151, expand authority for regional transportation improvements. House Bill 1155, higher efficiency new construction residents. House Bill 1162, prohibit food establishments from using styrofoam. I just made that change title a little bit. 1163, House Bill 1163, management of single-use products, and Senate Bill 23, Colorado Working Group on School Safety. Are there any questions from anyone at home about those?
Great.
All right, so just so everyone remembers, there are now 4 of us on the Legislative Committee, and so it's me, Jenny, Catherine, Randall. So we had a good time. We'll keep you updated.
All right, thank you. Fantastic, okay. Moving to the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right, please open the vote.
Vote is open. I will close that vote, and the consent agenda passes unanimously.
Okay. We're moving into public hearings, CB 1941. I guess I don't. Joanna, would you like to read the title?
A bill for an ordinance amending Article 14 and Article 16 of Chapter 18 of the Northglenn Municipal Code regarding marijuana businesses.
I will now open the public hearing on CB 1941. Is there anyone who would like to speak either for or against? No. Seeing no one approach, I will close the public hearing. Moving into ordinances on second reading, CB 1941. We have previously heard the title. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance on second reading?
So moved.
Second.
Do we have anything to add?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. As we discussed briefly on first reading, this ordinance is intended to bring the city's marijuana regulations, both with medical and recreational marijuana, into accord with the state as it relates to residency requirements and eliminating many of the residency requirements to allow this to be more of a kind of a national industry as compared to what it first was when it was in Colorado, and it was really Colorado only. So this is keeping up with the state on residency restrictions.
Okay, do we have any discussion? Okay, please open the vote.
The vote is open. I will close that vote, and CB 1941 on second reading passes unanimously.
Okay, resolution CR 36. Joanna, will you read the title?
A resolution adopting the City of Northglenn 2020 pay plan as amended and amending the City of Northglenn 2020 personnel summary.
Move for approval.
Second.
Hi, can you summarize for us?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This item before you this evening consists of 2 reclassifications. And anytime we reclassify positions within the City of Northglenn, we are required to get council support and approval on those. So the 2 positions this evening include reclassification of a municipal services worker 3 to a heavy equipment operator. And that justification and job description is included with your packet. And then the second is reclassification of a master electrician to an electrical and mechanical technician. So both of these reclassification requests are based on current needs within the organization. And so for the newer council members, you'll see over time there are adjustments made to positions that are included within the pay plan. These changes do not reflect an increase in our full-time equivalency. So they're simply title changes to existing positions, and our FTE count will stay at 278.29 FTEs. Kent Kisselman, our Director of Public Works, Paula Jensen, our Management Services Director, both of them are here, and we are all happy to answer any questions you might have about these requests.
I actually do have one quick question.
Sure.
So, just out of curiosity, when we're reclassifying the master electrician to the electrical and mechanical technician, is that individual still gonna need to be a master electrician? Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's a vacancy. So typically when we reclassify from position to position, it's because a vacancy has been created and the director has recognized that instead of filling this vacancy, we really need to fill a position here. So the person doesn't work here anymore. And so we're taking that master electrician vacancy and we will now, with approval, post for an E&M tech instead.
All right. So the only reason why I was questioning is I would hate to see, somebody who has that type of skill set be lost to the organization, and then I saw also the change in the salary range, which are we asking somebody to hold the same credentials but pay them less?
The E&M, the electrical and mechanical supervisor, holds a master electrician license, so someone does still have it, correct? Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I want.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other? Please open the vote.
The vote is open. I will close that vote, and CR 36 passes unanimously.
CR 40. Joanna, will you read the title?
A resolution approving a professional services agreement between the City of Northglenn and Sport and Fitness Incorporated for the Northglenn Civic Center Phase 1 fitness equipment.
Move for approval.
Second.
So, City Manager Guyer?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Amanda Peterson, our Director of Parks, Recreation, and Culture, is going to provide you with a summary of this item.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Amanda Peterson, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Culture. And this is another of the FF&E, or Furniture, Fixture, and Equipment contracts that you've seen come forward as a part of the Civic Campus project. This specifically is all of the fitness equipment that will go in the new weight room, as well as, so the large pieces of equipment as well as the small fitness equipment that will outfit fitness classes and fitness programming throughout the facility. I believe the total contract amount is approximately $198,000. That is within the budget that we identified for soft costs for this item.
Seems reasonable.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Amanda, have we used this contractor or this vendor previously?
We have not specifically used this vendor. We did have a vendor that we have used previously. It was one of the finalists. However, this firm was able to provide a high-quality interview process. They had good references, and their pricing was significantly less for the same equipment.
Okay, thank you for that context.
Any other discussion?
I have a comment, Madam Mayor. I met a wonderful senior citizen this Saturday at a event with the Anythink Libraries, and we were talking to each other, and she was from Thornton. And I was telling her I was there as a city councilman, and she says, that is so wonderful because I choose to go to the Northglenn. I want to pass this on. She said, I go to the Northglenn Rec Center as opposed to the Thornton one strictly because they have better equipment and more of it. And so I thought that was just wonderful, hearing a Thornton resident, right, that says that they come here and somebody has really found that the quality of the equipment and the stuff that we offer is is worth her paying probably a little bit more money for as a non-resident. And so what we're doing appears to be wonderful and working, and this looks like a nice continuance of that. But I wanted to just pass that on to everyone. It was a nice kudos, I think, for our Parks Department.
We always appreciate hearing that, and the staff takes a lot of pride in providing high-quality programs. They haven't always had the facility to do that, and they know that the way that they can reach people is through the programming that they're offering, the maintenance that they're offering to equipment, and maintaining a good reputation. So it's nice to hear.
Thank you. On that note, are we holding on, or are we moving our equipment to the new rec center?
We do have some equipment that we will be moving to the new facility. That was part of our bid process, was we identified which pieces of equipment could move over. And we specifically spec'd equipment that was, for some of that, that's in the same line, so that it will work well with the pieces that we have that are in good condition that should be moved over with us. Particularly the
Equipment that
Cybex
Randall
equipment.
speaks of, we want to make sure that we don't lose that customer.
Correct. So the Cybex equipment, we did choose to stay with the Cybex line for much of that. The equipment that we know will be aging as it ages out, we will definitely be planning on replacing. But no, we maintained the same equipment lines because it has worked well for us from a maintenance standpoint as well as a customer satisfaction standpoint.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Will you open the vote?
The vote is open. I'll close that vote, and CR 40 passes unanimously.
Thank you. I will now recess the regular city council meeting and call to order a meeting of the Marijuana Licensing Authority. Joanna, will you call the roll?
Mayor Leidy?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford?
Here.
Councilmember Witkovich is absent. Councilmember Peterson?
Here.
Councilmember Downing? Here. Councilmember Brown is absent. Councilmember Goff?
Here.
Councilmember Duran-Mullica? Here. Councilmember Escabel?
Here.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the July 25th, 2016 meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Please open the vote.
The vote is open. I'll close that vote, and the motion to approve the minutes of the Marijuana Licensing Authority is approved unanimously.
Thank you. So we are working tonight with a manager registration application for the Green Solution LLC. Need a motion?
So moved.
Okay, and maybe it's in the wrong spot. Will the city clerk provide a summary of this item?
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and Council. As the Mayor stated, the item before you is a manager registration application filed by the Green Solution LLC. They do business as the Green Solution, and the licensee holds a retail marijuana store license for the business located at 470 Malley Drive. The application is requesting the approval of a new on-site manager, and that individual is Mr. Matthew Smith. The application is not eligible for administrative approval due to derogatory information that was disclosed during the investigation conducted by the city clerk's office. And for purposes of administrative approval, any type of criminal history is considered derogatory information, whether it's disclosed by the applicant or not. Pursuant to state statute, both state and local licensing authorities are allowed access to criminal record information to investigate the marijuana business license applications. So the authority has been provided a copy of the application, the background investigation, and the supporting documents in the meeting packet for tonight. So action is needed on the application. There are a few options for the authority, and those include approving the manager registration application, continuing consideration of the application to the next meeting if the authority needs additional information, or if the authority believes there is good cause or that good cause exists to deny the application, then the authority should direct the city attorney to draft a notice of a hearing and an order to show cause for review and issuance at the next meeting. So regarding whether good cause exists, based on the criteria in the municipal code, the authority may determine if the manager is of good moral character. The state marijuana rules define what good moral character means, and that is having a criminal history that demonstrates honesty, fairness, and respect for the rights of others and for the law. So the mere fact that a person has a criminal history should not be considered a basis for denial. When considering an individual's criminal record, the authority may consider pertinent circumstances or conduct that's connected to a conviction or an arrest. At the same time, the authority must also consider mitigating factors. Mr. Smith and representatives from the Green Solution are present tonight. They are here to discuss the application and to provide information about Mr. Smith's qualifications. So they're ready to come forward if you would like to call them forward to provide information at this time.
Excellent. So, Mr. Smith, would you like to come forward?
Absolutely. Madam Mayor, Council, thank you for your consideration this evening. Like was just discussed, I recently put in an application to take over the management position at the Northglenn location. Obviously, at this point, it's up to your guys' consideration. So based on what you guys have, I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys may have regarding the matter.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you.
I have a series of questions for you, so please indulge me.
Yes.
First, can you share more about the circumstances of your multiple arrests?
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as what was on the application overall, were 3 separate charges between the years of 2010 and 2015. 2 of the matters were domestic related and 1 was a DUI. All 3 misdemeanors. I have documentation here essentially stating that all 3 of those items, all of the sentences were completed without any incident. So I do have some specifics on those, but that's essentially the basic of it.
Are there any additional circumstantial details that you'd like to share about any of those incidents?
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, the DUI took place in 2011. I mean, I was just about, just over 21, so mistake made in youth. That one I've worked really hard, you know, after to make sure I'm, you know, following the law and following everything I need to. And then the domestic matters, that one, there was one that took place in 2010 and one in 2015. Both were with the same individual that I was in a relationship with for that length of time. You know, and essentially, without getting into, you know, too much dirty laundry, you know, it was a bad relationship on both sides. You know, I made mistakes, and I've been working for the last 5 years to move past them. Most notably, my 2 main priorities have been my daughter and then my career with TGS. So I'm a single father. I have sole custody of my daughter. She currently is in 1st grade. She goes to school in the area. You know, really the commitment to raising her and the opportunity that the organization and TGS has provided me to do that has been, you know, some of the, you know, pretty much the main, I think, indicators to my kind of rehabilitation and my commitment to move forward past, you know, the incidents that took place over those 5 years.
I appreciate you speaking about your rehabilitation.
Yeah.
Can you speak more about what specifically your rehabilitation included and what you learned, and 2, what you learned from your domestic violence convictions?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, through that, all the sentencing, you know, the classes I took were very beneficial as far as me learning to develop myself from the perspective of, you know, kind of on the you know, emotional side of things, as well as how to, you know, demonstrate empathy, character, and integrity. So those are all skills that have been a priority to me, moving my life past that point. You know, and honestly, in my you know, the opportunity I've had over the last 6 years to work with the Green Solution has helped tremendously towards me meeting my goals of developing and you know, continuing to grow myself. So.
I'll see.
No, go ahead. Well,
Go ahead. I'm going to let
Oh,
other council
I'm like,
members jump
she
in.
had a list, letting her go through it.
Yeah, no, please.
Hi. Thank you for coming,
Yeah.
and speaking to us.
Thank you.
A question I have is, and I'm not, I'm kind of new at this, so
Yeah.
I'm thinking about how to frame it. But between the time of the first domestic violence misdemeanor and the second one was 5 years.
Correct.
And so now that the second one was just 3 years ago. So,
Correct.
I mean, there's still, if it seemed like a long time, and then that behavior was repeated
Right.
to the point where you were charged with that. So I'm just wondering what you can say to us about how, we could feel comfortable that.
Sure,
it's
no,
not
absolutely, no,
gonna
I
be repeated.
completely understand. Like I said, both incidents over that 5-year period were with the same person. And, really it was a case of, on both sides, we were trying to make a relationship work despite many, negative aspects. But codependency, things like that, just negative attributes to a relationship. And both sides, me, which I can speak for, really was not equipped to, with the tools to, handle those types of situations, and then you include the fact that the 2010, we were new parents as well, added to that. So, I can just speak for, my actions, and taking responsibility for them. That was my perspective over the course of that relationship. The relationship has been over since then, and over that time, a lot of things have happened, opportunity with the company here, I've gotten full custody of my daughter. But really, to answer your question, it's one of those cases of, I had to go through those experiences to learn how to gain the tools to handle them, appropriately for my future, for the rest of my life.
Okay, thank you. And then
Yeah.
the other thing, and I'd like just kind of like a little more elaboration about how
Yeah.
you said that your past 6 years with the Green Solution has
Yeah.
helped you. Can you say some more about like why or how or how is that?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, so, when I came on in 2013 with TGS, we were still medical, operating in Northglenn. I grew up in Northglenn. My parents bought their first house right across the street from Malley Drive Elementary. That's where I went to kindergarten. This place has always been, my home. So, when TGS opened up back in 2010, I think it was, around 2013 is when I came on as an employee, and they really struck me because of their commitment to safety, to compliance, and most importantly, what they provide to the community. I think that aspect may get lost, especially now we're so far into this recreational marijuana experiment. But those values, TGS has stayed true to my entire tenure, and I think that my associates can speak for this as well. My performance record over that time mirrors the commitments that TGS as an organization has to its community. So the commitment to safety, professionalism, and as well as opportunity for the community to find, from an employment aspect. So, yep.
Please.
Mr. Smith, thank you very much for being here.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And this is certainly, I'm sure, difficult.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think it's very important, just the open process.
Yeah.
For us and for the city.
Yeah.
And we all have many questions.
Yeah.
And so I may ask for more time later for more questions here, but for starters, a couple things. When you submitted this license to the marijuana business license to the city clerk's office?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall, and I'm looking at what date that was, December 19th, 2019, is that correct?
Sounds about right, yep.
Okay. And I'm looking on page 4 here of our packets, Council 4 of 11. And when it asked about, your background.
Yeah.
With some arrests and crimes and the like, you listed the 2012 misdemeanor, the driving DWAI, is that correct?
Correct.
And you listed the 2015 misdemeanor.
Correct.
And I don't see the 2017 one.
So you should have, you have on the application 2015 and 2011, correct?
I have, okay,
Yeah.
let me see.
It's 2012, but.
2012.
Yeah, 2000, yeah.
2011, yeah.
Okay, so did you list all your charges on this
Yeah,
application?
the only one that was not
Oh, it's
listed
really
was the first domestic incident from 2010. So the reason that wasn't listed, when I went home to do the application, the paperwork that I have spoke to that it was a deferred sentence, or that it was dismissed after successful completion of diversion. So in all my paperwork, it states that the case was dismissed after successful completion and the charge withdrawn. Because of that verbiage, I didn't list it. It obviously came up on the arrest record, so I apologize for that. That was the reasoning for failing to include that one. Since it ended in a case withdrawal, with the verbiage that was on the application, it just kind of confused me, so I didn't include it. But I have all of that information to back that up right here, if you guys need it.
Okay. Because when the criminal report came in, again, it was listed for the 3.
Right.
The 2 for the
Correct.
domestics and the 1, the driving.
Correct.
Okay, so I want to ask about the driving, if I
Okay.
can.
Yeah.
You indicated it was a DUI, right?
Correct.
Now, it looks like the record says it's DWAI?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And so was this alcohol or was this drugs?
It was alcohol. Yeah, it was alcohol in a prescription that I was on at the time.
Okay, so it wasn't related to your trade and work in the marijuana industry?
No, that was not related to cannabis. No, it was a prescription drug and then alcohol as well.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
If you continue to, however this goes for the application,
Yeah.
for manager registration here, I'd like to know, I'd still like to know a little bit more about your past,
Sure.
but I'd like to know more about your future.
Sure.
How would you contribute to this community? I mean, what's your plan besides that you're indebted to, your employers and they've done some work and you've been there for 6 years?
Sure.
But how can the people and the citizens and the businesses of Northglenn look to you as a leader and a great citizen and a part of our community? I mean, how can you make our town, all of our town, how can you make this town better?
I think that's, the best way I can put that, working in the, management role is, through my commitment again to ensuring that the citizens of Northglenn have a safe and controlled avenue for their cannabis needs. And I know there's, a lot more business going on in Northglenn than there was when TGS opened up. And coming into the store with as much history as it has, it's my goal to maintain the reputation that TGS has and continue to be a part of what they do to contribute positively to the community. For me personally, my contributions at this point have revolved around what I can make this, how I can make this community better for my daughter. Over the last couple of years, since she started going to school, I volunteer at the school, up to a few times a week, or a few times a month, as much as I'm able to with work. Right now, that's been my main avenue of, giving back to a community that's given my family and myself so much consideration, in a place to call home. As a, speaking for the organization, I know we do a lot of community outreach, volunteering that we do monthly, and so continuing to be a part of that as well. So other than, professionally, 8 to 10 working in the business, that I can be a part of the organization and actively contribute outside of, just my job.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to follow up on a couple of things that you said over the course of our conversation, and I appreciate your patience with this. I can't imagine that this is particularly comfortable or enjoyable for Monday evening. But you mentioned during the first situation of domestic violence, that you and your partner had just become new parents. And I can imagine that that situation was particularly stressful.
Yes.
Especially as a mom myself. And I know that in the time since being a parent, that it's often stressful. And I can imagine, though, and as a parallel, that the operating in an environment where there's a high level of scrutiny can be stressful.
Right.
And so I'm curious to know, what sort of assurance do I have? What sort of assurance does Northglenn have?
Yeah.
That you're going to react appropriately to a stressful situation while you're on the job?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I think that, again, if needed, my colleagues can speak to my performance record over my time as a general manager in TGS, which has been over the last 6 years. There have been multiple stressful incidents, whether it's, customer escalations inside the store, employee safety incidents, what have you. It's been my goal to operate with my employees and my customers' safety as the first priority. I feel like, in my career so far, I have a record of that, and I think that record is representative of what my goals are, which is a continuation of, essentially being, the best example I can be as a manager and a leader, and the best representative I can be as a company, for a company with a reputation such as TGS.
Okay. And then another follow-up question. You were mentioned that your February 2011 driving while under the influence of drugs was also related to prescription drugs. Were you misusing the prescription drugs at that time?
It wasn't a misuse. They were in my possession, and that charge was included with the combination of the alcohol, but there was no misuse.
Okay. And then a final question. I know that a lot of times instances of domestic violence, and you have 2 on your record.
Yes.
Ultimately come down to power and control, and you're going to hold a whole lot of power and control as a manager. What assurance do we have that you are going to use that power and control in an appropriate way? I mean, this may be a rehash of the second question, but
not at all. I
think
appreciate it.
I can understand that you're nervous, but if you'd let me finish, that would be great. But what assurance do we have that you're going to stay on the straightened path? Because I'm worried about a pattern of behavior.
Sure. Yeah. No, and I understand, and I can see that, and that concern and that pattern is a part of my past, and I live with it every day. And I'm standing here in front of all of you, which, like you said, definitely an uncomfortable situation. As an exercise to, continue to move past that and prove to myself, my family, and my community that that part of my life is something that I regret, but that I'm going to, utilize what I've learned to be a better person going forward. About the power and control piece specifically. That was one of the first, reflections that I had moving past the last incident in 2015. And I realized myself, as a person, that's not what I want to be. I don't want to consider myself or project that I am a controller or somebody who cares about power. What I care about is leadership. Again, integrity, respect, and building relationships with people professionally and personally. That's empathetic, that's collaborative, and I think that, again, that's what has been represented in my work ethic over the last 6 years. And I'm very proud of the path that I've gotten myself on. And for my daughter, for my livelihood, that's something that, I feel comfortable saying that is in the past, those behaviors.
I do have a question. I see that you did receive your occupational license verification from the state.
Yes.
What type of process did you go through? Is it similar to what you're going through this evening?
Somewhat. Over the last 6 years, I've worked in Denver, Aurora, Westminster, all who have their own regulations about management for the cannabis industry. For the state, I've had my badge for about the last 6 years. Initially, when I first got my badge, I did have to provide final dispositions to the state regarding the things that showed up on my background check. Once I submitted those, I did not have any sort of anything like this. I essentially provided those and was able to obtain my badge. And it was the same process for Aurora as well. Kind of like the Thornton manager registration, I had to register through Aurora, which consisted of a background check and all of that, so.
And with the state, were there any conditions that applied?
No. Just all the conditions that apply to everybody who applies and gets a badge through the state.
What about Aurora? Did they ask for any conditions?
They did not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I know that you've covered a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
I think one of the last questions I have, and you've kind of mentioned it a little earlier, and I was just curious if there's anything you'd like to elaborate on.
Yeah.
Would be, I personally, for me as a resident in Northglenn, and I know for my neighbors, something that's really important is that there's like a level of professionalism and trust when it comes to the marijuana businesses
Absolutely.
that we have in our city. I've been able to go and visit one of, not Green Solution, a different one, and I really understand the complexity and the regulation around it, and I have a strong appreciation for that after being able to see the work that you do.
Yeah.
One of the things that I am really just kind of hoping you might have something else to speak on about is how would you like to continue to demonstrate professionalism in the industry in your new role?
Right.
And then how have you perhaps not been able to do that in the past 6 years since you've had in the company? Just to give us a better understanding of your career so far.
Sure. When I was first looking at the cannabis industry as a career opportunity, I looked at what my values were, and one of the big ones is trust. I think for myself as a manager working in an industry that is so highly scrutinized, trust is the most important thing from the community, from the customers that you deal with every single day. What we do is so close to people and so personal that you can only achieve what we try to achieve, which is trust and a consistent experience is by talking to customers, getting to know them, building rapport, and building that trust. And that's something that I've been committed to doing since day one. I started with the company as a line level employee, talking to a couple hundred people every single day, and I strive to continue that, working in a management role. So not only myself working as the main representative of TGS in Northglenn, but that is also instilled to my employees. So we provide somewhere that the community can come in and feel comfortable, know that they're being told the truth, especially about something that's so personal. I feel like there's no higher value that can be placed on something like that. So.
I just want a point of clarification. Are we intending to hear from the gentleman, the colleagues tonight, or is that part of our discussion?
That was my hope, yes.
Okay,
I just didn't know
that's
if
what I
everyone-
wanted to know
does
that as well.
everyone-
Awesome.
We have enough work.
And I just want to clarify for council. So ultimately tonight, you have three options. One is to approve. The second is to continue if there's additional information. The third is to actually set it for a hearing on the issue of essentially moral character. So you are certainly welcome to hear from others, but understand that if you pick the third option of setting it for a hearing, it'll be a hearing under oath.
I would love to invite guests to speak on his behalf.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, city staff. My name is Ben Schulte. I'm general counsel for the Green Solution. And I haven't known Mr. Smith very long. I've been with the company about a year and a half. And I just wanted to speak very briefly about the company and about our faith in Mr. Smith's abilities. First, a clerical matter. I want to hand the city attorney the disposition on the 2010 harassment telephone threat, showing that it was a misdemeanor 3 with the plea withdrawn and the case dismissed. Since I've been with TGS, I've learned a lot about the industry. I came from commercial trucks and forklifts, highly regulated industries, but nothing compared to how Colorado treats the cannabis industry. I've been extremely impressed with TGS, and I have embraced their culture of compliance. And that is one of the things that drew me to this company, that has kept me with the company, and has been inspiring for me to work with people who have made something of themselves in an industry that tends to be suspect. Mr. Smith is an example of that. He started, as he said, as a line-level retail associate. We don't call them bud tenders. They are retail associates. We pride ourselves on the knowledge and the shopping experience to keep people coming back to our stores. The most important thing is that he has had a history of developing and increased responsibility that he has managed very well. He has been a general manager of other stores, including Aurora, which is a significantly tougher environment than many other places like Denver. From a compliance standpoint, following all those regulations, making sure that his employees are following all the rules. The med is very tough. We do our own internal compliance audits on a regular basis, and he has come through those with flying colors. That is the compliance side. On the personal side, Casey Efting can talk to you about his personality on the job. He's been a supervisor. He's a regional vice president at this point, and he's known Mr. Smith pretty much his entire career with TGS. So he can talk to you more about his management style and why he's been entrusted with our flagship store. And it really is. The Malley store is one of the first stores. It's our largest store. It is, in some cases, an anchor for that shopping center. So that is, without question, a vote of confidence from the management at TGS, and I just wanted to express that to all of you. And unless you have any questions for me, thank you for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming. I am very interested in hearing from you, though, so come on up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and the council for allowing me to speak on the character of my colleague, Matthew Smith. My name is Casey Efting. I am the regional manager. I appreciate the vice president out of it, the regional manager for the Green Solution here in Colorado. I have also been with the company for about 6 years. In my time with the company, it has been really fulfilling to watch young leadership come up in this industry. I started up as a bud tender a little later than most. I was in my 30s. But right away, you start to realize who the up-and-comers are and who you're going to be competing against for these leadership roles, which is why I've known Matt Smith for so long. We were both very hungry from the start, so been competing for roles in leadership ever since the beginning. So we were side by side as leads, assistant managers, and GMs of different facilities. So like I said, I'm always looking out for who may be able to take my place if I'm not able to do my duties. And he's definitely one of the people that I would actually trust to take over if I were ever to not have my position. As far as character goes, he has worked in our largest facility in Aurora with a staff of 30 plus employees. And one of the first things I noticed about how he engaged with his staff is it's not a situation of power and control with his people. It is a situation of a team, almost to the point of a family in his facilities. You can tell there's a lot of compassion and care for what goes on within our four walls and outside of them, as every single manager has to basically come to the conclusion with our staff that you're not just the leadership inside that store. You have to put on many different hats. You may have to be, a guidance counselor one day. You may have to, give them any type of advice that they're searching for. Give them structure that they're seeking. But all in all, you have to be a chameleon and be able to, adapt to each one of your individuals. And with having 30 plus under that roof, I have no doubt in my mind that he can handle a staff of what we have at Malley, which is, closer to 50. As I watch him continue to rise the ranks, I continue to extend, what I've learned in my a little bit longer tenure in the professional community. But he's up and coming for sure. One of the biggest things I notice with my staff too is, I always struggle with how I phrase this. We all have life circumstances. I have a lot of single parents that work within my company, all different levels of employment. Some of them use that as a reason of why they can't do certain things. They can't make they can't make certain parts of the job work. Whereas Matt has always made being a single parent and as a very, very high priority, but he's used that for reasons for why he's successful as well. It's not a reason why he can't overachieve and why he can't put more effort in. It's probably one of the main reasons he does. Providing for his daughter, I can't imagine how difficult that would be. I don't have kids myself, but I have the utmost respect for his ability to handle both those tasks at an extremely high level, in my opinion. If you have any questions for me, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you. This is just a technical thing, but you're describing him working in this Aurora facility and other places. Was this at the same position that he's going to be having here in Northglenn?
Yes, he was the general manager of our location in Aurora at Peoria and Parker Road. Peoria and Parker Road. He's also the general manager of our facility on Grape Street in Denver, and he was also the general manager of our facility in Westminster off of Federal.
Thank you. Mr. Efting?
Yes, sir.
Is that how I pronounce it?
Perfect.
Okay. Thanks for being here tonight and talking to us. I appreciate it very much.
Absolutely. Is
there any concern in the industry-wide, throughout the industry, right? Industry-wide, is there any concern, the scrutiny is high.
Yes.
And is there concern that past run-ins with the law will diminish the credibility of the entire industry? If you have a person in leadership position with, regardless of the level, but with consistent problems with arrests, is there a concern that something along those lines taints the entire industry, subjecting it to more state or even federal regulation?
Yeah, and that's a really good question, Councilman. I think that could possibly plague any industry.
Okay.
As I mentioned before, one of the things I've noticed in the industry is young leadership. Unfortunately, young people make mistakes. I think that we will watch the industry mature with our leadership as well. Like I said, you look into the past of any industry, but yeah, if you want to focus on cannabis, you could probably find some interesting pasts. What I do find, comfort in is every single city I work with. The state starts off with background checks to make sure that the state is okay with that person holding a badge to be within our facilities. And then also working with cities that have higher standards, such as Aurora. I've worked heavily with them to keep on raising that bar of expectations of our industry. Does give me comfort that we can work past youthful indiscretions. And when I say youthful, I mean of the employees, and I also mean of the industry itself. A lot of this has been, over my tenure, has been figuring it out. There has never been a clear guideline that says everything in black and white of how the cannabis industry works, which is why the Green Solution has been always upfront with our mission and helping define what those expectations are as well. So we can mature this industry into something that has the expectations of something that's been around for 100 years. We're ramping up very quickly and we're working very hard.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Absolutely. I hope that answered your question.
It does. And then just as a follow-up, let's say that you had a competitor in the industry, right, and was applying for the same type of managerial license on this, with the same type of facts as we've seen here. Would you have a problem with that approval of that license if it was a competitor of yours?
No. I find that, as a manager myself, the character of my people and getting to understand where they are today does have more impact on where they were in the past.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here.
I love
Final comments?
Sorry, but I enjoy every experience I get to work with the council here in Northglenn. Circumstances are always different, but the class and the dignity is always here, and I've always appreciated how you guys conduct business. Working at Matt's soon-to-be facility of Northglenn was actually my first opportunity into the industry. So Northglenn does have a very significant part of my career. I have a ton of respect. This city really helped us get to where we are, get me to where I am today. And, anything we can do to uphold our expectations and give that back to you, we will do every single day.
Well, I love those final comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith, will you join us again at the podium, please? Thank you. So while I don't know where this is going to land, I just wanted to thank you for your transparency. You were extremely open, and as a couple of people have already mentioned, this was a tough thing. And it sounds like you've done this in other cities, and I appreciate that as well. It does, being that transparent and putting yourself through this amount of scrutiny does show your commitment to the company. And that I really appreciate. And I also appreciate your work as a single parent. That is not an easy job. I do the same. So I just love that. So, council, we have 3 motions available to us. Without reading the exact same language, I would say you could motion to approve, motion to consider, to continue the consideration, or motion to direct a hearing.
I move to approve.
Second.
All right. Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted?
I'm sorry.
No worries.
Are you just waiting on me to decide? Or are there others that you're waiting on?
Where do you hit?
I don't know.
You don't
No.
send.
Well, I've gone back and forth 3 times. 'Cause I can't
Oh, is that
decide.
why she's waiting?
That's probably what she's
Oh,
waiting.
okay.
Can we maybe time out? Is it too late to roll back and actually have a conversation about what folks are thinking? Because I feel like we're just making a decision without actually having a conversation about what folks are thinking. and I feel like I'm really stuck and want to hear from my colleagues.
My opinion on the situation is we had a motion to approve, we had a second. I heard, based on the question, what the concerns of my colleagues were, and I voted the way I feel like to vote. I think you should just vote your conscience.
Corey, would I be able, since I made the motion, would I be able to withdraw the motion so that we can have a conversation?
The vote's already partially in.
Okay.
Just vote how you're feeling. Okay.
Okay. I will close that vote, and the motion to approve the manager registration application filed by the Green Solution passes with 2 no votes cast by Mayor Pro Tem Wilford and Councilmember Peterson.
All right, thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, I will now adjourn the meeting of the Marijuana Licensing Authority and reconvene the regular city council meeting. We are moving into discussion items. The first one is the Northglenn Civic Center Project Phase 1 Implementation January update. And Amanda Peterson is here to provide an update on the Northglenn Civic Center project.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. So I am here tonight to provide you with we were calling them monthly updates. They've kind of become bi-monthly updates just in meeting. We've noticed that there tends to be 1 month where we're taking action and we're bringing updates forward to you, and then 1 month where we're providing you just with a general project update. So here in January, we have a general project update for you. Since the groundbreaking in late October, FCI, our CMGC, or Construction Manager General Contractor on the project, has maintained their schedule. They've made very significant progress. If you've noticed out there, if you look out the windows on the west side of the building, you can see those changes happening pretty much daily at this point. But they've made really great progress on the site infrastructure. As of early January, the foundation permit was issued. So since that time, they have placed they were at about 60 caissons out of 389. We got to be out there on site when they were placing just the very first couple, and the contractor were saying it's really exciting to see the drill happening and concrete being poured and things going in, and just see that whole process. And they informed me that it's really exciting until you get to about the 400th one. So the good news is we only have 389. So they're going to stay excited through the whole time. That's what we're counting on. But in December, Barker Rinker Seacat, our architect on the project, along with, or in coordination with FCI and city staff and Project One as the project administrator, they did complete the construction documents for the building. So that was another major milestone that they finished. Since that time, FCI, as the CMGC, has been working towards gathering bids, formal bids on all of the specialty trades that will go into the new facility, or the actual construction process. And they will use all of those bids, along with some of their self-performed work, to create the FGMP, or the final guaranteed maximum price. So as just a quick reminder, with the CMGC process, we hired FCI as our CMGC. Their very first contract with us was actually their smallest, and that was just for the design services, so that they participated throughout the design process and provided feedback from a construction perspective. Then last summer, they issued the IGMP. That was based on that schematic design set, and that was the initial guaranteed maximum price. And if you recall, that was the first addendum to their contract. At that stage, we had about a 5% construction contingency, and I believe about a 3% bidding contingency that was built into that pricing. At that stage, we then kind of split apart our site and our building. Because obviously site work can happen before the building comes up out of the ground. So the next addendum that you approved with FCI was in October, really right before that, our formal groundbreaking. And that was for the site final guaranteed maximum price. So that portion is in progress and is what you see happening out behind us right now. The final major addendum to the FCI contract will be the building FGMP, or final guaranteed maximum price, and that's what they're working on right now. That should come in at a 3% construction contingency, so reduced from 5% to 3%, and then there's no bidding contingency that remains in that FGMP as compared to the initial guaranteed maximum price. So our timeline for that is we plan to bring forward to you a study session on February 10th to review the construction document set as well as that FGMP. And then if we can maintain that schedule, we would bring forward the FGMP, or the contract addendum, on February 24th. I will know tomorrow. I was hoping I might know tonight, but I will really know tomorrow a little more about exactly where we're at with the FGMP, and if they have been able to bring that number to match the budget that we have for the project, or if there's still some tweaks that need to be made. I don't know if some of you may remember, but at the SD phase, we got the initial pricing in, and they had to stop and collaborate between the architect and the contractor, subs, make sure that they're bidding the same materials, make sure that there might be some less expensive alternatives that exist. Maybe that we need to look at some of our alternative options and either accept or deny those at this stage. So that's what staff's been doing over the last week or so since we received the first look at the FGMP from FCI. We still have a little bit of a gap, but we are hopeful that by tomorrow's meeting that we may have been able to close that gap. Like I said, we'll know that tomorrow, and based on where we're at, we will let council know if we're going to be able to maintain that February 10th study session and then February 24th council meeting for the FGMP, or if the design team's going to need a little more time to continue to tweak that until they reach an appropriate budget. Other than that, that's kind of the big news. Other than that, staff attended the Mingle with the Mayor event last week. We did roll out a timeline that is attached to your packet tonight. We're really looking at a way to more visually represent all of the detail that has gone into the project thus far in a way that community can kind of at a glance see where we're at and what our next major steps are. The vision for that is that we would post that on the website, and then we can update that. There's a little star towards the right side of that timeline, but that we would continue to update that and move that star along, probably eliminating detail from earlier in the process and adding detail for the stages we're at the time currently at, so that the community always knows exactly where we're at and where we're headed with that project. Other than that, the other big news I wanted to share with you is our Northglenn Arts and Humanities Foundation did put out a call for entry via cafe to commission an artist for the lobby sculpture. We are excited. We received almost 100 inquiries, complete portfolios for us to review. The committee and the committee is composed of members of the Arts and Humanities Foundation, as well as one representative from each of the boards and commissions that are directly tied to Parks and Recreation. Staff went through the first 97 or so and looked at really who can do the project, who has done atrium work, who has done a large hanging piece, who has is taking into consideration things like the engineering and that go behind that. We were able to narrow it down to 37 that we felt really were strong candidates. Of those 37, the committee reviewed each of those independently first, and then came together to discuss them as a group and narrowed it to the top 4 candidates, which will be, we are holding interviews with each of those 4 candidates via phone or Skype or a video conference on Thursday evening, and are hoping to narrow that to the finalist. Hopefully 1 finalist. We may be down to 2 this week, depending on how those conversations go. So that's exciting news. And we were really very pleased with not only the quantity of applicants that we received, but the quality. Like I said, we got it down to 37 really high quality artists that had done some amazing work from around the country. So Taking a quick look at my notes, but other than that, like I said, we will know hopefully tomorrow if we're able to maintain our target dates of February 10th and February 24th. I think it is safe for you to assume that we will hit those dates unless we let you know otherwise that we need to request that schedule be pushed out. But our hope is that we can maintain that schedule, which will allow us to continue to stay on schedule for the construction of the project. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
So I have a question.
Yes.
You guys put out a survey about the playground equipment. How long is that survey going for, and do we have any idea of where we're headed? Because I voted for the space.
I saw your vote. I'm going to look at Diana. I have not seen our results of that yet, but I know that we did have some definite comments on social media, and I was seeing interest in 3 of the 4 the last time I looked. Okay. It was pretty evenly split amongst those 3. Have we seen
It doesn't end until February 10th, and we saw
So-
mentioning heading households this week, so.
Good.
I'd say it's up in the air.
So we're going to be patient, but yes, please go on, if you haven't already, we'd love for you to take a look. We put 4 themes out for consideration for the indoor play area. We did try to keep all of those just as themes, so the people weren't weighing, well, I like this slide, or I like this play feature, but starting just with the themes. The 4 that went out were a space theme, as you already mentioned, a under the sea theme, a jungle theme, and
Dinosaur.
Thank you, prehistoric. So, yes.
Hi, Amanda. Just a couple things. I love this timeline, and I think it's great for our residents to look at. And as we go further and further and getting closer to completion, just a suggestion to consider, perhaps maybe making this interactive online, right? So you don't have to confine something to simply one page. And that way, because I think this past information is invaluable. And I think it's really important to show our journey. And that would be something as we continue to grow and have more information, that it's just a click away and you can still see as much or as little as the timeline as a resident would like.
Yep, I love that, and I think we can make that happen on the website, and that way the paper version gets condensed, but people can always go get that full.
Yeah, and it's just for
Timeline.
consideration. And Councilwoman Wickovic and I have talked about how important this is to our residents and showing the information and the development and where we're going on this at our ward meetings. And so I'll just plant the seed that maybe a version of this or a summary invitation to yourself to speak at some of our Ward 1 ward meetings early on to show the public where we're at and where we're going. This is of high interest to our residents.
Of course, I'm happy to come out
Wonderful.
and speak at any of the meetings, just let me know
Will do.
when and where.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm looking at this, and I'm all the way at the end, past the little star that says now. It says that construction is ongoing, starting, it looks like spring 2020, but technically it's already started, hasn't it?
So we picked a spot kind of in the middle for, John and I went rounds on where all of those lines went. But really, it's just indicating, he, in his defense, he did have it as a little bracket that encompassed the whole space. I thought it was a little more difficult to read, so he just picked a spot of ongoing construction
Okay,
with
the
the
reason
narrative in the box.
The reason I'm asking that is that, when is it, it says anticipated, is that, I guess I'm kind of confused about when you anticipated opening. Because it says construction ongoing.
So construction ongoing between now and, right now, the timeline says late summer 2021.
See, that's what I thought.
But
this says fall,
until
winter.
the engineering staff, until we have that signed FGMP, and they can sign on all of their subcontractors, that all of those documents are finalized, they have asked that we be a little flexible with that end date, because obviously if we were to push out, say we need to push out 2 weeks to sign the FGMP, that can have more than a 2-week impact on some of those subcontractors going down the line.
And I just want to say, this is not a criticism. You guys are doing a great job. It's just that I know everybody is so excited that, looking at that makes it sound like it's going to start open later than we are all hoping.
We are still aiming for that late summer, early fall 2021, but I have to honor the process of, until we have it all signed, we want to be cautious in providing an exact date.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I was actually optimistic. I thought winter 2021 was like January, like, because it's winter.
You are right.
The first day of winter.
See?
Yeah, I was like, wow. That'd be exciting. So a couple of things. First of all, thank you for coming to mingle with the mayor and bringing this timeline and sharing this information with our residents. It was a very thorough presentation, and I appreciate it. When I look at this timeline, I do think it's awesome, but my focus is almost, can we zoom in on between now and then? Because that's the timeline that I think our residents want to know, like what's gonna, so when I zero in, I'm like, oh, that doesn't tell me anything. If we, if we could blow that out and say, the playground is here and this decision is here and kind of that now to finish, really explain what's happening, because that's kind of the exciting part. I mean, I know you mentioned you liked it before, but that's the boring stuff, right? The design and the money and the budgeting and the architect, like, we picked an architect. I'm like, yeah, like, that's the boring stuff. Now we're in the meat of all the fun. And I think that would be really exciting to share that timeline and what comes first.
Yeah, and I think we can try to balance that, right? This was the first one out, so we covered that history piece, and like I said, I see some of that, at least on the print versions, starting to condense, but I do like the idea of keeping everything, all of that information on the website and being able to do that without constraining ourselves to 11 by 17. I was like, could I have 2 sides of 11 by 17? And they told me no. But using the website gives us the opportunity to put all of that information out there while still adding that level of detail in the moments that we're at.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right, the next discussion item is the proposed homelessness community task force and some next steps. And so City Manager Geyer will present this information. Present it.
Thank you, Mayor. So before you this evening is a draft application form and then a program outline, as I'm referring to it, to guide the next steps for inviting resident service providers, members of our faith communities here in Northglenn, neighboring communities to participate on our community task force. So Mayor and Council, you made this a priority in our 2019 to 2023 strategic plan, and we had slated Q1 2020 to have the Community Homelessness Task Force stood up. So the overall purpose of the task force, I've outlined different bullets on page 1 of the staff memo that I believe I've heard from each of you, from the community as a whole. So I'm not going to necessarily read those, but I would like reaction if we're missing anything in terms of what you view as the core focus of the task force. One of the things that I added into the staff memo is I have continually heard this question of how can we provide a warm hand to members of our community who are experiencing homelessness. So I think that can really serve as the bedrock or pillar of the work of the task force. And so I've added that into the program outline. So if we could stop there and you could react and provide me with any feedback on the overall purpose. Yes.
Not the overall purpose. Maybe I shall wait.
Okay. Any feedback on overall purpose?
Yes.
Thank you, once again. Because I have just come in on the end of this, goodness, I lost where it's under the overall purpose bullets that you've listed here. Can you just explain to me what a homelessness navigator would do if the city was to hire one that's above and beyond what we can already do?
Sure. And so a homelessness navigator is a position that many cities and towns are moving towards hiring. It's an individual that provides that connection. It goes beyond providing phone numbers to individuals experiencing homelessness. So we know there's degrees of homelessness. And so right now, in terms of we're able to provide support through our police officers, through other positions that are out in the field and come in contact with individuals experiencing homelessness in our community. However, we don't have a dedicated, although we have an individual in our police department who has a set-aside amount of time, which is limited to providing assistance. We don't have an individual who has worked in this field and can then leverage partnerships with other agencies and really provide that connection and be out in the field and support our individuals throughout our community. So I know that communities in Jefferson County in particular have moved to this model. So there's this great partnership amongst Jefferson County cities that have tried different things, and they have come together on a regional level, and they've made a commitment, each city. So the city of Wheat Ridge, who I used to work for, they received support from their council in the 2020 budget to hire a 0.5 FTE. So the size and scale looks different by city. Lakewood, I believe, is hiring 2 or more homelessness navigators, and then Arvada following suit. So this is a type of position that's the individual is skilled and networked within the various agencies and communities. So this individual could potentially, if the task force were to say, yes, this is something we recommend to council and want to look at. So I provided that as one of the more practical options that cities are looking at currently. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
I have a question. So,
Sure.
a couple of things to piggyback on what you said. As I'm reading through the memo and I see the staff will support but not serve on the task force, my concern is that we wouldn't have a connection, any sort of staff liaison to help us move forward. It sounds like it would almost run as an independent body. And so I just, that one made me wonder. But per what you just said, is it something that before we move forward in an official capacity, have we talked to Adams County and our partners about possibly doing something a little more combined like Jefferson County?
So I'll answer your first question, which is we are going to have a staff liaison to support the task force, and that individual will be the assistant to the city manager. The distinction that I'm making with staff not serving on the task force is different than staff supporting the task force. We have been in contact with Adams County, and they have an interest in supporting our work here locally. I haven't had a lot of traction in terms of doing something more on the level of what Jefferson County has done. Each entity has really been doing their own thing, to say it simply. So I think, part of what we've experienced is a hope that Adams County would be further along in their efforts, and they haven't. So my focus as manager is to make sure that we do what we need to do to really create the momentum here locally, knowing that there's connections. And so we need to be working hand in hand with Adams County. And so I think as the work of the task force picks up and this task force makes recommendations to you all, we can leverage those partnerships and really make the connections and get things going. So does that help? When I first started, my impression and what I was told was Adams County is going to be doing, say, A, B, C, and D. Their work has been slower in terms of moving forward. In particular, when you heard the presentation in November by Sam Olson on even the severe weather shelter activation, they had hoped that they were going to be farther along. And so I think there's things that we can be doing locally that we need to focus on, knowing that a lot of that connects to what they're doing, but we need to spearhead that.
So really quickly, hold on. To follow up, so I hear that Adams County is not ready, but I'm wondering if we have a better chance of partnering with the cities. So, because we are such a small city that is completely encompassed by other cities. So if we could partner with cities, not necessarily Adams County as a whole, but our neighboring friends, I think that would go a long way. So as, you know, part of the long-term vision, I think that would be something that we could do that probably is a little more grassroots than waiting for Adams County to put something together. So that's just my thought.
Okay.
All right, so, and actually, Meredith, I completely agree with you, because I feel like, you know, from the past session, the study session that we did have, that we, at least I, felt a little frustrated with Adams County's progress. I mean, I think that it makes sense that they have, you know, some skin in the game of this, but unfortunately, it didn't go as fast as we all thought it was going to go. And I think one of the things that we need to talk about as council members is how do we start that grassroots process? Because I have had conversations with council members from Thornton and Brighton and Westminster who are interested in moving the needle on this. I think, unfortunately, there's just not a structured opportunity to do so. I don't know what Metro Mayors has done, and I know that Metro Mayors is obviously a lot bigger than Adams County, but I mean, I think that really we currently don't have a structure that kind of meets the needs of all of us coming together and sharing and working forward. And there has been discussion about, you know, do we expand AdCop into something different? And so I think that that's an important conversation that we need to continue to have. And if you and the other mayors are also interested in doing something like this, like, I think that we just need to start and plan a kickoff meeting, if you will. And if it needs to start with us, then that's great. I know that our staff would definitely probably help support any way we can. But I think it has to start with us. And so I think if anyone's really interested in kind of moving that forward, let's get together and chat and let's talk about what that looks like. So I did have one question for you though, Heather. Quickly, with the task force, a lot of the overall purpose that you're talking about in here, to me, seems like it requires a lot of information we don't have. How are you looking at collecting that information? Is it going to be prior to the task force meeting, or is it going to be part of the task force? The thing that I'm just kind of concerned about is if we're bringing in, you know, residents, we're asking them to donate time and, you know, effort into this task force, I really kind of want to hit the ground running. I want to make sure that they're spending, you know, their time very wisely, and that, you know, we kind of have something to work with. You know, I'm trying to think, what would that first meeting kind of be like? And so what were your thoughts around trying to collect some of the information to make decisions off of prior? What were your thoughts around that?
My thinking stemmed from keeping the first meeting of the task force more organic, that they, as a collective group, come up with the information that they think they need to know, and then providing that to myself and the assistant to the city manager, and we would then reach out to the organizations. Police department would be one obvious agency within the city, possibly parks, to come forward and make informational presentations to the task force. So I can certainly rethink the way I have it structured right now, and do more to set them up and suggest, here's some things that you could do to really hit the ground running, as you mentioned, and make sure that that they have those resources up front. So, I mean, there could be a series of informational presentations over the course of several meetings. I've been, as time is allowed, making contact with different service providers. So Ashley, the executive director at Almost Home, she's expressed an interest in serving on the task force. So she is critical and could be one of those subject matter experts that provides information to the task force on their services, what they can provide, some of the challenges that they experience related to limited funding and limited capacity to house families who are experiencing homelessness, and just given challenges in their location in Brighton versus being more central to the I-25 corridor, which they've expressed an interest and desire to be. So that's certainly subject to change is what I'm trying to say, and I can tighten that up. And
Well, and I think a lot of it obviously depends on staff time and your time to, try and collect this additional information. And I know that in here you put that the staff point person is probably going to be the assistant to the city manager when that position is filled.
Correct.
But until then, you're actually going to be filling
Yes.
it, right? So it's kind of a big lift too. So I was just kind of curious what your initial thoughts were when it comes to providing information to these folks.
one of the things that I've found over time is I want residents and service providers to feel like they're making a contribution and developing the work of the task force, and not necessarily staff saying this is your agenda. So I'm trying to balance. So I think as I use the term organic, I think there'll be alignment where, at the first meeting, I can have potential presentations set up. I can do the coordination. And as I know who's volunteering to serve on the task force, we can get that all pulled together. And I think it'll happen.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Heather, thanks for pulling this together. I know it's been a long time coming, and we've been having a lot of conversations about how to support individuals experiencing homelessness and how to mitigate their impacts potentially on residents. I think we all know that Adams County's been moving very slowly, and I know at their last presentation, I felt really frustrated that there wasn't an answer for what we were going to do during these cold months. And so while I definitely believe in regional collaboration, and I hope that we will get there, I feel like there's a lot of work that we need to do as Northglenn before we're ready to have those conversations. And I think a lot of that work is really well outlined in the overall purpose of the task force, in particular identifying who makes up Northglenn's population that's experiencing homelessness, because those are answers we don't have right now. And I don't know how we can interact regionally without having that baseline data and a sense of what is available right now in terms of resources. I know that the point in time study is coming up tomorrow, but unfortunately they don't aggregate that data for us to be able to see specifically how many folks come directly from Northglenn. So I think that this work is really important that it's outlined, so that, hopefully by us having these conversations and going through this process, we can be a model for other cities and inspire more regional collaboration that truly is so necessary when tackling some of these issues. I guess to the rest of the documents, since we've kind of dug in a little bit, I guess, outside of the task and the charge, I think those are right on. The one thing that I really feel like is missing is really an outline of a timeline for this task force and the determination of whether or not this task force is going to meet in perpetuity, or if this task force is going to meet from now until May. And part of the reason I bring this up is, one, I've been serving on a subcommittee for the city of Northglenn on a particular project for a year now, and there's no end in sight. There's no sort of, it just feels like there's no end in sight. There's no actionable goals that we're even near completing, and I don't want to see that happen. I've seen a lot of other cities take up a task force process where they've identified a short amount of time and structured the meetings so that every meeting is building upon the next meeting. Every meeting is building upon the information that has been established in the conversations that have been had. And so that's something that I would really like to see is more structure in the way that the task force meets and how they're going about identifying the goals or identifying the outcomes that this task force is created to figure out. The other thing that I think is really critical is that we establish who is going to be facilitating these meetings from the front end. That, you know, with the other subcommittee that I've been a part of, you know, staff had been facilitating, and while our staff is majorly competent and very thoughtful and engaged, I feel like there has in the past been some feeling that staff is leading this process, and it's not necessarily a community process that's happening. And so I would really like to see there be an identified chairperson from the get-go as far as who's going to be facilitating and leading these meetings. And certainly if staff is supporting, you know, I think there are a whole host of opportunities for that level of support. And I do think that there should be a staff person who serves on the committee because they have a lot of information in terms of how the city functions and what interactions they've had with residents. Experiencing homelessness and not. And so that's one piece. And so whether that's a council member serving as the chairperson or another individual, a community member serving as the chairperson, I think we really need to hammer that down. And then the final thing is that to Councilmember Molika's point around gathering a lot of that information on the front end, and I don't want to speak for you, Heather, but I don't know that we have all of this data right now. And so I'm wondering if $200 to $500 is sufficient in order to truly do the evaluation that we need to do. So that was a lot of words. I'm just gonna leave that one for now, and we can continue this conversation.
Okay.
Okay. Couple things. I'm wondering, and I don't know if it's an appropriate venue, but the Adams County Mayors and City Manager meeting, if there's a way to somehow ask the question. Because I think mayors come together to get done what they want to get done. And so I can think of a recent situation. Mayor of Westminster reached out with purpose and urgency and nagged the rest of us to death, and we got something done, which was great. And that's not a negative, it was very purposeful. So I do think there's hope there. I think we can move a little faster with our partners than we think. So just something to think about. Heather, maybe you and I can brainstorm what is the best venue to have those discussions. And I'm also happy to become the new one that is hounding my colleagues. So, because I do value this work. I have some concerns, I think, that are echoing the Mayor Pro Tem, is having kind of a unstructured group of people and saying, here, figure it out. And having that, because I'm looking at that section that says when and how long, like, so they're gonna join each other, and outside of, hi, nice to meet you, then they're developing it all. And it just feels like it's gonna need a little more guidance and support to get it off the ground. The other thing I'm wondering about is the kickoff and the timeline is, first of all, what happens if nobody applies? Is there a minimum or a maximum number of people for the task force? Because if we get, you know, the almost home liaison and then one other person, like, is 2 people, are they going to be able to put something together? So those are my thoughts.
Are there any other questions before I respond to questions?
The only other one that I want to know is if we are opening this up and taking anybody who applies, right? I appreciate that folks are willing to volunteer their time. My concern is what happens in the event that we have someone who is obstructive and not helpful in moving the conversation forward.
There you go. Lots of questions.
Great questions. Lots of questions. So I'll start to respond, and then you help me out if I fail to respond to a question. I did take the approach of having this be more grassroots and organic. I completely hear the feedback, and we can make this more structured. Very easily, we can make it more structured. On a couple of fronts, if you'd like, this is intended to be an advisory committee where there's not necessarily a formal interview process by council or appointment. There'd be the creation of the task force made by a motion at a future council meeting, but not necessarily as formal as our other boards and commissions. So the intent is more short-term, and as I have in the memo, that following that intent is to have recommendations as we move into the 2021 budget season. So that way we can start having discussions around priorities and budgeting. If the task force says, yes, I do think Northglenn, we need to have a homelessness navigator, whether that be 0.5 FTE or 1 full-time FTE, we have that information and can tie that into our budget priorities. So that's one thing. So I do need direction from council. If you want to make this more formal and you all would like to be vetting, interviewing the individuals who apply to be on the task force, then we can make that part of this process. It will push out the time frame. I'm not saying that's a negative thing. It's just a consideration to make. And more than likely, if we do that, we'll probably be closer to a first meeting, say, mid to late March. So something to think about there. In terms of facilitation of the meetings, sometimes communities do this differently. So we could always hire a facilitator to work with the committee. I can play an initial facilitation role until they select a chair, and then again, I would be providing that support along with my assistant to the city manager. If council has a desire to serve on the committee, that's one of the questions that I have in the staff memo, then we can figure out how that plays into the overall structure and making sure that there's more of a specific role in terms of what that, what the role of a council member, would look like serving on the task force. If council wants to provide an end date, I've seen this happen in other communities, that we would like to see recommendations by X date. We can do that as well. And so definitely would like your feedback on that. I'm hearing you say that, I kept it looser, that I'd like it to tie into the 2021 budget process. Typically, we really gear up for that beginning in May, June, culminating with the adoption of the budget in late October, so there's some flexibility there. But I do envision this task force meeting regularly, and I completely understand your concerns, Councilmember Wilford, about the subcommittee that you're referring to. I think this is different, and I think our hope is that we'll engage not only residents, but individuals from the different service organizations, such as Ashley that I mentioned with Almost Home. Paulo with the county, along with Sam, have expressed an interest in participating. And so part of what I have built into the memo is that I'll be reaching out to different service providers here in Northglenn and inviting them to participate. Adams 12 5-star schools may have an interest in having a staff member. I would be shocked if we have a lack of interest. And I think if we end up in that position, we'll have to pivot and reassess and figure out how to keep moving forward. Based on the time that I've been here, this has been a long time coming, and I know there is interest. I think we're fortunate. I've been able to reach out to a resident, Josh Gabelt. He's a VP with the Denver Rescue Mission, and he's been a great resource to me in reviewing what I've put together, offering the suggested questions that we have on the application form. So one of the pieces of feedback that he gave to me when I asked him if he'd be interested in serving on this task force was that it had to be action-oriented. He did not want to share his time and talent on a task force and then have nothing happen as a result. So I think an overarching purpose is that we will put to take the work of the task force and put it into action.
So, and first of all, Heather, I really appreciate you putting this all together. You have heard us and heard our frustrations about trying to move forward with this very, very complex issue. And I think that you have really done a great job at taking a stab at like, all right, how are we trying to move forward here? Because to be honest with you, I don't think anyone up here knows what's the best solution. We don't know how to move forward. We just want to. And so I think that this is a great start and a great conversation starter about what the true needs are of finding an actual solution. So honestly, I am still a little reserved with the task force. I like the idea of bringing in, you know, all of the partners that we have in the area, like Almost Home and Growing Home and all of those different, I guess, interests, and bringing us to the table to have this conversation. But I still feel like we need something to start. And I know that, and honestly, and maybe this is just my background because I think everything has to be based on data. But, you know, I feel like we actually need some type of information to go off of. If we are going to be an action-oriented committee, we have to know a baseline. We have to know where we're starting from. And I'm not really sure if jumping into this task force without that information is going to allow us to be successful. And maybe maybe other people disagree with me, and that's fine. And so I'm not really sure if this is the right suggestion to make or not. But I mean, should we look at how do we collect a certain level of information to move forward on? Is that the right approach? Or do others feel like, you know, we can be successful without coming with anything to the table? Thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's a zero-sum game on that, and I understand the need for data and a baseline. But in terms of what? If I'm taking a look here at the purpose of the task force as envisioned, one of them is identify who makes up Northglenn's homeless population. And so it's like, okay, if we're starting this task force that can start to give us the data, and if we have an action-oriented agenda to where that is, not just some vagary, but something that's a real thing that the council is looking for to get, I want to make sure if we would do that we're not punting our responsibility to people that, we say, well, go provide this data and you guys figure it out over a meeting on how to do it. So I see something of a hybrid of there. I want to get that data, but I think it's more than data. I think I'm not sure that's the first starting point. I agree with your frustration of I don't know where to start. But if the vision is to develop recommendations as well as start to give a snapshot of the things that are happening in the community, that could be something that could be real serious that we could implement in terms of a timeline, a charge, a structure, and possibly some increased funding to allow this potential task force to be able to do that job effectively. And then to begin to make periodic recommendations to council in terms of also their struggles, what they need, that kind of thing. So how do we, so I guess I agree with you. How do we empower them to specifically do the work and get the information we would need to use this as a collaborative process?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm looking at this as a person who first got involved in some city stuff by one of these positions being put out, and then it was something I was interested in. So I filled out the form, went to the first meeting, got the information. And what I am imagining is that the citizens of Northglenn who come are going to be people who are interested in the homelessness issues because they see it. And so I think that a first meeting, and then if you get these other members of the task force are people who are providers and people who work in the city and the police department, I can see that the first meeting would be some really helpful discussion around what homelessness actually is. Because, when I talk to my neighbors or people, in the street or whatever, a lot of them will say, oh, homelessness is such a problem. But I hear all kinds of things about what they think that means. So I just think that could be even a great place to start. And yes, I think, and I see here that the first kickoff is to develop a timeline, identify regular meetings and times, and all just kind of organizational stuff. But then I think a really deep conversation about like why are you guys here? Why what do you think about homelessness? Why is it a problem? What do you think what do you think you want to do to help address this problem? And then maybe a follow-up meeting could be where some information is given to them about what, according to what they're thinking of about homelessness, what that is in Northglenn. I mean, if it's just, it could be maybe people aren't even thinking of families. I guess it's in the news a lot that there's a lot more homelessness has to do with families, but I think a lot of people just, think of like single person, pushing a shopping cart full of belongings or something. So I think, there's a lot of ways it could be really helpful. Just to get that information out and to get a discussion about what people think that means in North.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Madam
go
Mayor.
ahead.
Just following up on that too, I think it would be, I envision this by empowering the task force by having action steps and goals. But at the same time, not necessarily hamstringing them by a timeline that this needs to be done by a certain date in case something develops into a more substantive investigatory or research or reporting back process on that too. Because this is an ongoing thing, right? And this isn't gonna end this isn't a short-term thing we're dealing with. And so, if we say this is gonna be around for 8 months or 9 months or something like that, that might be too limited, right? So we can empower with action steps and look to be able to do substantive things, but not necessarily say, by this date, or then we're done, and thanks very much for your service. I see this ongoing.
Yeah. Can I just
Yeah.
respond to that? I guess I have a somewhat different perspective on this, because I think of a task force as a group of people who are getting together, gathering information, getting organized, and then they're going to present to probably us, and then we're going to decide what the next step is. So I really do think, as my partner here as was mentioning before, that there should be a deadline, because they're not, I understand the whole action thing, but a task force isn't, I don't see this task force as solving the problem, but more as making some really clear recommendations about what they think we can do. So that's just a slight difference.
Thank you, Mayor. So I feel like you articulated a lot of what I wanted to say. Hearing that we really need to establish funding priorities by June or July makes me feel like if we are going to take some actionable steps in the 2021 budget, that we really do need some baseline recommendations before or as we consider what the budget is, which is why I think, maybe the best approach is a hybrid approach where our first deadline and check-in with the committee is in June or early July to say, how are things going? Here are our initial recommendations. And then to take a step back and say, here's what we think we can do going forward. Here's what we're interested in doing going forward, so we can make sure that everybody's aligned and really truly assess whether or not the task force model is working for us. And so I'll just leave it there.
I think I'm still having just a hard time wrapping my head around this because I think that it's hard to put a deadline on something when you don't even know what the ask is. Like, we don't have an ask tonight specifically of like what exactly you're going to be doing and how much time it's going to take to get there or money it's going to take to get there. We don't even, I mean, the recommendation is just a couple $100. So I think that's just what I'm really struggling with. And I do think one thing I did want to comment on is city council representatives. I actually do think that city council should have a role in this. Why should we punt this to a group of very intelligent, very, well-intentioned people? I feel like, we have a role to play in this as well, in trying to find a solution, because we don't have one either. So that I just wanted to comment to that.
So, a couple things. I'm going to practice my paraphrasing. So what I've heard is that there's a lot of really good work that went behind this document. And I know that it has been mentioned, and I would concur that Heather has done a great job of listening to council concerns and pulling them together. And that we have some questions around timeline. I heard some pros and cons to setting deadlines or not setting deadlines, having some open flexibility versus setting more clear deadlines. Couple of things that I see in this is we probably could wrap up is because we're starting to do the work of the task force tonight. We're starting to dig in. We're starting to try to answer these questions. And it's too big to do tonight. And we really are. I was like, oh, we're starting to get into the weeds, which is great. That shows our passion for it. But I think we can move ahead. The other piece, when I look at the overall purpose, those bullets there, those will be those guiding bullets for what the task force begins to accomplish as they meet. So I think that's where I went, Julie, when you said, I don't know what they're going to do. I was like, oh, I think there's a list there of some things that they can start to tackle, going back to their purpose. The questions that I see are knowing that our city manager is going to take forward all of this input and move forward. Do we feel comfortable with the timeline of putting the application and outreach starting Wednesday and looking at that timeline? So that's question one. And number two, do we have feedback for the application? I believe those are the two action items that we need to address tonight.
I like the application. I think it looks good.
Application's fine.
Okay, application gets the thumbs up.
Great, thank
Timeline,
you.
how are we feeling about moving forward?
I think it's good. We just need to get started. So that looks fine by me. The only little minor question I have is, are you envisioning capping off? I mean, let's say we got 200 applicants, which I doubt, but I mean, is there a manageable number for a group?
That's a great question. I hadn't really thought about capping it off because I made the assumption that we'll probably have 10 to 15 on the higher end. So I think also part of my thinking was anybody who wants to participate, we're willing to have them at the table and they'll have value to offer. So I didn't want to, say we should only have 15 or we should only have 20 task force members because individuals have so many different backgrounds and perspectives to offer. And that's also why I kept the criteria pretty broad to service providers, residents, members of faith communities. We could have a really passionate resident who, I know we have passionate residents who volunteer at food banks. And so they'll have a perspective to provide. So, I would be surprised if we get any more than 20, but
Well, I mean, I think it's great to have, I mean, I totally agree with your philosophy that anyone who's interested, was sort of concerned about like resources or just managing a certain number of people or something like that. There's,
Meeting space.
yeah.
This is like the
That,
biggest
you know,
question.
So
that would be my only concern.
Can I request that we receive a council update around February 21st? So
Yes.
after all the applications have come in, and then another experience like this, where we get to talk about any revisions you've made to the process based on what has come in?
Yes, I can add this as a continued discussion item to February 24th meeting. Were you going to say something, Corey? Okay. So at that point, we'll know what applications have been submitted. What I'll do in the meantime is outline what the first few meetings could look like without doing the whole process for the task force, but to set some foundational components to get them going and off and running, I think, as it was shared earlier. And then probably what I need to do is make it more apparent that council is looking for recommendations to align with the 2021 budget process. So the work could go through June, July, beyond, and I'll draw out that the task force, because this is really important, will be making the recommendations to council. It's not me or the assistant to the city manager. We'll support the work of the task force, but they'll be presenting to all of you.
Yeah, just real quick, procedurally, what if somebody wants to join the task force after this application process? A month, 2 months, 3 months down the road? Is this an open, close, here's our window to get people involved in the community? And then whatever number we have, what happens, let's 2 or 3 drop off or aren't active participants? I mean, what do we do for any sort of fluidity with that?
It's a great question, Councilmember Peterson. I think if someone shows an interest that previously didn't go through the process, I think we'd still have them fill out an application. And because the application has very specific questions on it to gauge interest. And so I think that we wouldn't want to necessarily exclude someone that has a lot to offer. And I think the key is to keep the membership of the task force engaged to where we don't have individuals falling off unless there's circumstances beyond all of our control.
Thank you.
Any final thoughts? Do you have what you need?
I'm just curious to follow up on the council member piece. I mean, is there anybody interested in serving on this task force? I know it's an area that I'm very passionate about, but I'm just curious, like, does anybody else want to work on this task force?
If it fits in my schedule.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
I mean, and the other thing I was wondering too is if it could be something that we could rotate, you know, or does it have to be like one person assigned? Because I would be interested as well, but, you know, I don't know. I don't know when they're going to schedule it. None of us do.
None of us do. None of us do.
Okay.
All right.
I think I'm good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, yeah.
Okay, we're going to move into communications. I'm going to start with Councilmember Peterson.
Yeah. Didn't expect that. I'm going to start and then pass the baton. I had the opportunity to, and I spoke about this at the last council meeting, I had the opportunity to attend Anythink Libraries organization called Civic Saturday. And it's a fascinating thing, and it's modeled on not even a secular, but a civic ceremonial service. Church service almost, and so there were songs, Beatles songs, you know, and a speech and readings from books and small group discussions where citizens made, and this is fascinating, I think, civic resolutions, and to where, you know, not like a New Year's resolution, but how can you impact your city and your community and your world? The setup was amazing, as they would have these great pictures and placards that says, the first time I voted was when? And the first time I was inspired in government or politics was, and people would write on their sticky notes and put up there. And it was just it was just inspiring. It was inspiring about the work that our Anythink libraries do, and it was inspiring watching our community come together. And Councilwoman Goth was there, and I'm sure she would echo some of the same things, but it's just very special for me. It was a great thing, and I look forward to supporting the Northglenn Police this Friday night at their Policeman's Ball, and encourage residents to do the same.
Just to mention about the Arts and Humanities Foundation, Amanda mentioned the staff had looked at all of the applications, which were close to 100, and then kind of filtered out the ones that just came to 37. She didn't really mention that, how many hours that went into. Just going through the 37, we must have spent about 8 hours going through those applications before we went to the meeting. So thank you, staff, for all you've done. I know I appreciate everything, because now I say I did not want to go through 100, 37 was fine, and now we have selected the 4 for a FaceTime to decide who's going to actually do the work. And they're all awesome, awesome pieces of work. So thank you. But I didn't want Amanda to just say, oh, we just did this, because it's just not, we did this. It's hours of work.
All right, I feel like the last couple of weeks have been just jam-packed with meetings and committees getting going, and so I'm gonna skip over all of the very many meetings that I've gone to and try and hit some of the highlights. So 2 weeks ago, I attended a Northglenn PBL, and that, for those of you who may be new to that term, it's a problem-based learning scenario that the Northglenn High School students who are part of the STEM project have a problem that they have to solve. And then they have members from the community who come and give them feedback about their solution. And so I had a lot of fun hearing about some of the products that the students created that were used to generate and use their own electricity. And I saw everything from bicycles that were going to power the entire high school to trampolines that when you jump on them, they power a projector that projects the constellation on the ceiling. So I was really impressed with the level of creativity and the amount of work that the students did to prepare. And I know that it was super nerve-wracking as freshmen, but they all did a really fantastic job. And if you all ever have the opportunity to participate, it's a lot of fun. Next up, I did attend the AdCog dinner in Broomfield and had a fantastic time getting to meet so many other council members and mayors across the region. We were supposed to have a conversation about legislative updates, but instead we had a shorter conversation and spent most of our time relationship building and talking about regional priorities, which was really also great. And then finally, I attended a NADER retreat this weekend, which was completely eye-opening, and I was completely surprised by just how complicated it is to establish and fund the transportation priorities in the region, and I still feel like I don't know what just happened. But I did 2 things. I walked away with a water bottle from the N line, which I thought was really funny because it didn't have a date. It was so elusive. And then secondly, I walked away with a renewed sense of needing to get out of my car and on my feet or on a bike. And so my family and I went and bought bicycles at Mile High Thrift Store and went for a little ride through Ward 4 and happened upon the fire truck station, or the fire station, retiring an old engine that had been around for 19 years and saw 200,000 miles. And they just had brought on a new fire truck. And so that ceremony was really special. Even though we weren't right up there in front of the fire trucks, we were watching from afar, and it was great. And then the final thing was, on our ride, we went through the Northwest Open Space and really took a moment to appreciate all of the improvements that the city has invested in that park. Everything from wayfinding to the playground to the new bathhouse, or the bathrooms, as well as the concession stand. It's just such a tremendous amount of improvements that have done over there, and I think we should be really proud of that project. I think folks are going to really love it when it comes summertime. So that's all for me this evening. Thank you.
Well, I went to the first meeting of the Rangeview Library Board, which is Anything Library, on January 15th, and I received a very warm welcome. I was very happy to be there. And then as Council Member Peterson mentioned, the Civic Saturday event was very enlightening. He neglected to mention that he actually read out loud. He read one of the books out loud. Did a great job. And the other thing that happened at that particular event that I just want to remind citizens and anyone who might be interested, that at this event, they also had people from the census, and they were encouraging people to, spread the word, to participate in the census and how important that is. And I didn't think to write down the numbers, but the amount of money that Adams County did not receive in the last 10 years due to people not filling out the census forms last time was staggering. So it is really important that it can affect a lot of local organizations and services that maybe you don't even realize. So it's very important to participate in the census. And then Adams County elections people were there also, and they were desperately looking for people who would be interested in working during the election time, in a variety of positions, I guess I should say. So, it's just a little part-time job if you're interested, or if you want to volunteer. And then the other thing, I'm just going to ask people as a reminder to register to vote and please vote. So that's it. Thank you.
All right, so I have a couple things. First of all, I actually completely forgot something in the legislative update. So I did want to let everyone know that Northglenn's having a Northglenn Legislative Day. So we're going to invite all of council down to the Capitol. It's going to be Thursday, March 5th. We're going to do some breakfast. We're going to visit the Senate or House floors, and then do a dome tour. So definitely, if you could make it, that would be great. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I did attend Mingle with the Mayor. Good job, Meredith. This was actually my first mingle or anything with the mayor. I was never able to do the coffees with the mayor because, I work and I have kids. So I found coverage and I went, and it was awesome. So congratulations on successful mingle with the mayor. I do have a couple NADA updates. So NADA stands for the North Area Transportation Alliance, for those who can't remember that because we have so many acronyms that we have to deal with. So anyway, first off, we did have our kickoff retreat and orientation that Jenny came to on Saturday. My idea for this was to actually really help orient our newbies to the transportation conversation, and I hope they got a good dose of just how difficult this conversation could be. We actually have in the packet there was a very long list of acronyms that I just felt so bad for because I have to reference it all the time. So it's a very complex conversation, but we had a great time. Other news from NADA is, so I was selected as the chair for 2020. We do have our very own Joyce Downing, who's chair of Smart Commute for 2020 as well. So we have a lot of transportation power here in Northglenn. A couple other important things is NADA did put out a position statement to RTD, really just kind of outlining what are the important priorities for our region, and that actually went out in December. I'm going down to the RTD meeting tomorrow evening to read it, to make sure that all of our directors are fully aware of what our priorities are for the North area. And then other than that, they did have an update on, a CDOT update on segment 3, which is north of 136 to Highway 7. For those folks who are interested in that work that's going on, they're looking at completing the construction in the spring. Tolls are going to go live on April 20th. So lots of fun there. And then finally, I wanted to end with so a really just kind of upsetting email that I got over the weekend about Adams 12, and we've had 5 deaths in the past 40 days in our school district. And I'm a mom of 3 kids, 2 of them are in the school district, and it was really devastating, and it was really hard for me to kind of hear that news. And so my thoughts and prayers go out to, of course, those families and those lives affected. And you know, I've been really thinking about what is it that I could do to contribute, and I haven't really figured what that is yet. But I'm interested in getting involved and trying to figure out how we could curb this. So one of the things that I'm definitely committed to is reaching out to our superintendent, as well as talking with our health department. So I serve on the Tri-County, and this is definitely going to be a huge issue that I focus on, and would like to see some continued work on forward. So.
All right. I was wondering where I was going to start because I got about 14 things here. I agree with you, Julie, that I got a call today too from a constituent talking about Adams 12, and you know, it affects the whole community. It isn't just the families or the school. It affects the whole community, all of Adams 12 community. So, you know, the gentleman was asking me, what can I do? What can you do? Well, you know, it's a big problem, and I guess awareness is the biggest piece. And when we don't have any other answers, we pray. So, first of all, I want to start off with kudos to our mayor and staff for a wonderful team-building exercise that we had.
It's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I think it's something that will bring our council even closer together. I haven't really talked with a lot of people about their experience, but my experience was great. I also want to send out kudos to Diane Wilson for her city manager report. I actually read the whole thing this time around because it caught my attention. The formatting, the color, everything was, compared to what we had in the past, I would look at it and I go, another city manager's report. I kind of know what's going on, you know. But this one was really interesting. I really enjoyed it, and kudos to you. I'm a representative liaison for the Northglenn Senior Organization, and I've been having a lot of fun. I didn't realize I was a senior until I got there. But I do have a lot of work to do in terms of communications to them. They're interested in what's going on in the city, and really have not been prepared to say we're doing A, B, C, and give them kind of an update. So I'm going to work on that, and hopefully it will it'll get better. PBL, I also attended the PBL at Northglenn High School a couple of weeks ago, and yes, it's amazing what kind of ideas they had, from jumping on a floor that generated enough energy to light the whole gymnasium and heat the gymnasium. I know a lot of this out-of-the-box thinking, but my communication to all of the students, these are freshmen, 9th graders. My communication was, it's not whether it's gonna work or not. The importance was the idea. You know, all great inventions started with an idea. From the light bulb to the computer to whatever, it was an idea. Somebody had an idea, and they encouraged them to keep pushing that envelope forward. An idea, and no, you may not get the support you need initially, but if you keep pushing that envelope, somebody will, you know, Apple was just an idea. When I first saw the apple, I thought, that's a teacher's apple, but it had a bite out of it. I didn't quite get it. For you, Heather, can we get a copy of the Diversity Awards application to NLC? Can you send us one?
Sure, I can provide that to council.
Okay. That does it for me. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Excellent, thank you. So I had to take a minute and look at the calendar and realize that it's only been 2 weeks since we've met. But I think we all have a list of quite a few things that we have attended. Just those regional partnerships. I attended the State of the Cities event that was put on by the Denver Business Journal. And they highlighted 4 mayors on a panel. The topic, the main focus was about sustainability and growth. So that was really informative. The following day, there were quite a few of us at the State of the State address in Adams County. Our governor spoke, and that was also, that encompassed his entire agenda, and that was very informative and nice to see all the colleagues. A lot of AdCog events, the AdCog dinner for all of us, but also the mayors and city managers get together, and that's another theme. The topic was transportation. That's coming up a lot, and our sort of, all of our frustrations are very similar in the region, and transportation is one of them. The Mingle with the Mayor event, thank you to staff, as I mentioned. It was a really great event. We had quite a few people there, and it was fun. It was nice to see a good chunk of the Youth Commission in attendance. That was fun. But residents had great questions, and it was just nice to talk to everybody. We haven't scheduled the next one yet. We're tossing around some ideas. So if you have requests for location and times and days, let us know, and we'll try to figure that out. I went on Sunday, so I didn't see you from afar, to the retiring of the fire truck at Station 62. That was the coolest thing I did all week. I just applaud the North Metro Fire District. They're a class act, and their process of sort of taking an older truck and putting it sort of in retirement, it's on reserve, and welcoming in a new truck. They did tons of ceremonious activities and traditions, and something that was so cool is both trucks extended their ladders, and a firefighter went on each one, and they passed an axe from one to the other, and that was a rite of passage. Community members, mostly children, washed the tires of the new truck, and that was also part of tradition. And then the community pushed the truck into place in the garage. A lot of members of the North Metro Fire District Board were in attendance, and that was really fun to see. It was a great community event. They served s'mores and hot chocolate. It was just fun. It was really fun. And that new truck is amazing. So amazing. But they did a test of the old truck's ladder went up kind of at a snail's pace in comparison. The new one just went flying up and extended 32 feet longer than the previous one. So a lot of updated technology which will benefit anyone in need. So that was really cool. If you couldn't tell, I love it. Our team building day, I just appreciate everyone's participation, and it was a really great day. Councilmember Brown was certainly missed, and I can't wait till she comes back. We'll do a miniature version and catch her up on some of our key discussion topics at a study session. But she was definitely missed. It was it was just fun. And we learned a lot, we talked a lot, we dug into our code of conduct as a council and some of our protocols, and we're gonna continue that work. We learned a lot about each other, which I personally enjoyed. And then thank you to the staff for we did a Northglenn amazing race. And then all of that fun and craziness ultimately benefited the Food for Hope Food Bank at Northglenn High School. And that was just the icing on the cake. So I just really appreciate everyone joining us for that. Final note, really quickly, just to kind of piggyback on Councilmember Mullica's comments. Something to know is that Adams 12 has invested, even as recent as this year, into more funds toward mental health support for our students. That was a budget change, and all of our schools have increased mental health support. Most of them have what's called a SELS, which stands for Social Emotional Learning Specialist, SELS. They don't have a full-time one, they have a half-time one. That is an additional position that is new and is supporting our students. Something I've learned recently is the Community Reach Center. Just a huge shout out to that organization because they have therapists and counselors on site at many of our schools, and they can actually provide ongoing therapy to students in need. So while it is super tragic, it is comforting to know that Adams 12 as a district is putting their money where their mouth is, and they are saying it's a need in our community, and we are doing our best to provide additional mental health supports for students. So just something to I don't know if that helps, but something to know. Joanna, how are you? Any update?
I'm good, thank you. I do have two quick items.
Okay.
First, staff will be participating from the city clerk's office in the point-in-time survey tomorrow at the Recreation Center. We had held a sock drive late last year, and we had made a deal with our passport customers that we would provide a free passport photograph if they donated a pair of socks. So unfortunately, I don't have a final count of the total number of pairs of socks that were donated, but we will be giving them to the individuals and families who participate in the count tomorrow. And we are so very thankful to everybody who donated, and we feel really fortunate that we can provide those to the individuals that are in our community there. And then second thing, we will be having a City Council Outside Agency Funding Committee meeting tomorrow night at 6 p.m. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. A few items to update council on. On February 7th, Paula Jensen, our Management Services Director, is retiring. So I'd like to thank her and acknowledge all of the hard work and dedication that she has provided to the city over the time that she's been with us. Again, 17 years here at the city of Northglenn. She's going to be moving on to do something new and different, doesn't know what that looks like yet, but we wish her the best of luck, and definitely want to acknowledge her involvement in shaping the special events that the city has today, Magic Fest, Pirate Fest. She wears a lot of different hats as our Management Services Director, and so again, just would like to thank her for her commitment to the city. I will be providing council with an update moving forward as to what the transition and restructuring looks like of the Management Services Department. So likely on February 10th, I will share more about what that looks like when I have those pieces in place. Exciting news, Rupa Venkatesh is going to serve as our new assistant to the city manager, our first assistant to the city manager. She was selected out of a very competitive process, currently works for the town of Mooresville, North Carolina, and will be moving to the city of Northglenn here at the end of February. She starts with us on February 27th. So we're excited to have her. I'll share more about her background and the assets, value she's going to bring to the city of Northglenn moving forward. And then I just want to acknowledge that I did have a chance to reach out to Chris Godowski and Pat Hamilton this afternoon via email, and they appreciated the reach out and will certainly follow up with me if there's something specific that we can do, not only as an organization but as a community to help provide them with support. But they definitely appreciated the reach out, so I would definitely encourage any of you that wish to do that to please do that. And if you don't have their email addresses, I am happy to provide that information to you. And that's all I have this evening.
Anything, Cory?
Nothing this evening.
All right. Okay, we've moved into public invited to be heard. Is there anyone who would like to speak to council? Hey, come on forward. So statements are limited to 3 minutes, and they must be related to an item previously addressed by the council this evening.
Terrific. My name is Beth McElry. I've been a resident of Northglenn for 30-some-odd years. This is my first meeting, and I was fascinated by it, so thank you all very much. My comment is mostly with regards to what I consider the interview process for the manager for the dispensary, which, by the way, is very close to me. And I thought the process was somewhat painful, frankly. And I'm wondering if perhaps a different process could be employed to assure that whatever criteria it needs to be met. But I'm just really not sure that the amount of time that was spent on that is really all that helpful. And I was particularly struck by the questions that you asked, Ms. Downing, which I thought was actually much more helpful of, is this person who we're putting in charge of this dispensary, did they pass state issues and locality issues, et cetera? So that was my general comment about the feeling. Then the only other thing is, as a person who's starting to become more civically oriented, I've looked at our website, our being Northglenn, and when you talk about the requests from citizen participation, for instance, the what we want the theme to be for the equipment, for the play equipment, I don't see that, and or the requests for volunteer. So I'm wondering, where is that, and how is that communication done? And maybe it's just because it's me and I don't see it, or maybe it's not that accessible. Just a question.
Okay, I appreciate your feedback. Does anyone want to answer or respond? Yes.
Well, I could tell you where the playground survey, I found it. It was on Facebook. So I know, yeah, and I think that, I'm not sure if it is anywhere else on the website. It may or may not be, but that's where I found it. It popped up on my Facebook.
I did find it on the website, but I think I would just have to say that we're working on it because there's just so much information. And as a person who has worked designing, web pages for schools, I know how hard that is to get the information that everybody wants right where they. So we appreciate your feedback. We'll take it under consideration.
Yeah,
And so then if I did want to volunteer, where do I go?
I was just going to look at my app, but what do you have?
Are you looking to volunteer to provide input for the rec center or for the homelessness task force?
Or me? All the
Well, all of the above
Okay.
would be lovely, but the homeless piece struck my interest.
Okay.
But any
So typically what we
volunteer
do, and I'll preface this with typically what we do is we highlight certain areas on the main page of the city website. So for instance, once we get the application for the homelessness task force uploaded, it's not there today. It's not there right now. It'll be there on Wednesday. There'll be a link off of the homepage. On the Park and Rec survey, I'm looking at staff to make sure that they can take a second look and make sure that it is very accessible off of the homepage. So that way you can go to our city homepage and find that link. We do have a volunteer page, I believe, in general, but there's information in a few different areas. So when in doubt, you can always reach out to a staff member here at the City of Northglenn. But we'll make sure to get your contact information, and we'll either call you or email you when the homelessness task force info is up on Wednesday, and then make sure you've got the guidance you need for the Park and Rec survey. Does that sound good?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you so much. And thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for staying. there anyone else? Come on up.
This was my first meeting too, really enjoyed it. Just to your point, I'm a big data guy myself. I'm like, get the data. But action creates data. So if you take a step and the data says you're going in the wrong direction, you can correct. That's all.
Excellent. What is your name, sir?
Ken Lassiter.
Oh, hi, nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Thank you, thank
Thanks
you for
for
being
coming.
here.
Thanks for being here.
Excellent, excellent. All right, anybody else? No. Okay, we're gonna move into executive session after a motion.
So
So moved.
All right. Joanna, can you open the vote, please?
Vote is open.
Wait a minute. I've lost that. Hold on.
Oh,
Vote when you're ready.
Wait, where is it?
No, I just want.
Yeah, the vote, okay.
Right.
Can you vote on
Say
it?
no to that?
Yeah, you can.
I shut everything down.
Have we all voted yet?
No, I had clicked the wrong thing and.
That's okay, I've done that.
Did you say no?
It's not ready. Yeah, all right.
Closed up vote and the motion to adjourn to executive session passes unanimously.
Excellent. Okay, we are adjourned to the executive session.
Couple minutes?
Yep, couple minutes. Let's take like a 4 minute.